All right, and we are live. So there may be possible to do this, I don't know, but just making some chatter here at the beginning in order to get 10 people in the stream, and then I'll really get cracking. Someone was very mad that I didn't edit out the break. There'll be a break in the middle of this, and so when you get to that, I don't know if there's a post live stream editing ability. Generally speaking, when a video is uploaded to YouTube, you can't do much except for maybe sometimes add something to the end, as far as I know, but I am not the master techie by any stretch of the imagination. So just wait until we get a couple more people in here. If you want to get a shout out, just put your name over there instead. I'll give you a shout out. And by the way, thank you, Daniel Zach Smith. I'm going to go ahead and put this up. Boom. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And just put any questions you have for the second half for the Q&A. Just put that in the comment section there, and I will get to it in the second half. And I'm just going to wait till there's just a few more people on here. I've been getting in trouble with YouTube recently, and so I don't know if maybe like it's not sending out to people, because I know they definitely suppress the channel and throttle it and so forth, and have subscribers melt away. I was talking to, I just went on the Veritas Radio to do a interview with Mel Hostelrich, and he said he's been at, God, what was it, 99,000 subscribers on YouTube for like 5 years or something insane, or 3 years, and that it would get right within like 50 subscribers, and all of a sudden like 200 or 300 would disappear, and then it would go back down to 999,000. And I don't, I would love to have the 99,000 problem, but that's not one that I have, to paraphrase Dr. Dre. I think said that. Anyways, oh no, it was Beyonce's Evil Ass Husband, whose name escapes me, Jay-Z. That's right. Anyways, so anyone want to shout out? Go ahead and say something in the channel. I'm kind of waiting till there's 10, although it's been a little bit long here. Again, I think that my subscribers are not getting the bell notifications pretty clearly. So if you are a subscriber, check to make sure that you have that bell checked, because they're clearly not really sending it out. I just need to get an email list for people to say, well, it's been going for 2.5 minutes. I'm just going to go ahead and start, and hopefully we get some more folks on here soon. All right. So this week, I'm going to be talking about a few different things, but I'm just going to kind of start off with the ongoing shadow war between the Luciferians and the Molochians. So if you're new to the channel and you're like, Luciferians and Molochians, what's that? I highly recommend that you go and watch the Shadow War series and start with episode 1. It really is the best way to understand it. I'm going to very briefly throw this diagram up while I talk here, so that way new people can maybe get a gist of what it's all about without me having to spend the time to explain it for people who are more familiar. Again, if you're new, then what I definitely recommend is to go watch the Shadow War series, and also maybe to watch the Venetian Black Nobility series. So this is the chart that kind of explains the difference between most high Luciferian Molochian factions. And so I'm just talking about this is a state of consciousness, basically, just to super summarize it. And you can see where the different states of consciousness, it's an upward spiral as you're moving upwards towards a Sat Yuga or Golden Age, and it's a downward spiral as you move away from the Sat Yuga or Golden Age into where we currently are, the Kali Yugas here in the Iron Age. The good news is that we're at the end of the rising Kali Yuga, and so therefore we're about to move out of that into the Dwapara Bronze Yuga, and it should be dramatically better. And the way the angels have told me it is that we will move from Molochian consciousness, as you can see here, all these nasty things at the bottom dominating the world, to where Luciferian consciousness, including this higher edge, will be the dominant consciousness on the planet. There's also actual deities associated with this, but I'm not going to get into this too much. If that intrigued you and you're new to the channel, great, go watch the Shadow War series. But I'm going to come in here for the, from here, I'm going to kind of explain it to veterans of those concepts, or feel free to watch and perhaps you can learn. So real quick, I'm just going to say hi to Dana Swenson. I'm actually drinking coffee. It's been a long, crazy week with a lot of personal challenges and a lot of professional victories, actually, that I'm very proud of. Some really good stuff happened this week. I met a new gentleman that I hope to work with more. And if you're watching tonight, I'll just say his first initial, his first name is G, and he's a G. He's a gangster. No, he strikes me as a very ethical and self-reflective human being. And we actually had an interesting conversation about how seeing those states of consciousness as dominating Molochian, right? That's all the World Economic Forum guys, right? The Klaus Schwab's the world. Luciferian, that's the more Trump, Elon Musk kind of end of things, right? That he was saying, well, I'm wondering if I'm Luciferian. Like he said, I don't like the idea of Lucifer as the deity. He was raised Christian like me. He said, but I have to admit, I primarily sort of operate in that level of consciousness. And what I said is, and I'll actually go back to the diagram here because I do want to show this, and it's kind of naturally flowed. I said that where I kind of rest is here in this lower end of most high consciousness and the upper end of Luciferian consciousness, which is typified by, and this is where the overlap happens between those two states of consciousness: cooperation, advancements in arts and sciences, spiritualization of humanity, improved material well-being of humanity, right? So like, I want to do that for all of humanity, and liberty and free will. Those are the crossover values or kind of aspects. There's more than this, but these are major ones that start to make the archetypes pop. And it helps you understand everything that's going on in the world when you understand that most of what we're seeing right now is a struggle between a rising level of consciousness, which includes some quite dark stuff, versus this ultra evil consciousness that's dominated the planet for 6,000 years. And so he said, I think I kind of rest here. And he's like, I want to aspire towards that. And like, how do I do that? And he was curious about that, and I said, well, it's just a lot of like inner work. And he strikes me as a very self-reflective man. And he clearly has a spiritual background, and he is much more accomplished than me in many, many ways. So I just happen to have been graced with this insight from the angels. And so I said, that's where I rest. And that the reality is that most of us are kind of at this level of consciousness because the actual gravity of the planet's consciousness right now is really still down in that Molochian energy. It's in the process of changing. And so as it changes, so too will events on Earth and political factions and so forth. And what I talk about in this struggle between these two different levels of consciousness is I sometimes call it the shadow war, because people are right to point out that there are no white hats. They're not wrong about that. Well, they are wrong in the sense that there are white hats, but they're way off in the margins, because the Molochians have gone out of their way to try and stamp out most high consciousness, because one of their primary things, along with self-hatred, is they want to destroy God. They want a total inversion of nature, and they want destruction of God. The Luciferian impulse wants to put man at the center, the perfected man, the Virturian man of Leonardo da Vinci, right? They want humanity to perfect itself and to show how, rather than destroy God, yes, God exists, spiritualization for humanity, but we humans can do it. We know better than God. We can play at God. We can become gods, right? Very common in the New Age movement. And while that's certainly better than the slave, death, torture consciousness of Molochianism, it's still a false light away from truly loving thy neighbor as thyself, and truly being in touch and in love with the goodness inside yourself, and being in touch with that, and being in touch with your immortal spirit, and then seeing that in your fellow man, right? Being at that level of consciousness. Obviously, if that happened all over the world, you would have a golden age. And we're not moving into the golden age. We're moving into the bronze age. And if you're more interested, and if you want to hear more about that and cycles, I recommend that you watch the conversations with Bibbo Def Misra, because these are really like kind of core concepts to the channel. The Venetian Black Nobility, which I have a whole series on that. I don't go into that much anymore. And then the bifurcation in that ruling class elite between this Molochian sort of Venetian consciousness and this Florentine Luciferian consciousness. And so look into all those things if you're first time watching this. And I think that you'll understand, and then you can come back to these live streams and you'll appreciate a lot more of what's to be on offer. And so just some ways that this plays out is it largely is true for new viewers to the channel that the Democratic Party is unfortunately, and I was someone who was raised as a Democrat and have never voted for a Republican for president ever. I might this time. I might vote for Trump this time. Last time I voted in a restoration of the Republic and the spiritual awakening of humanity and the restoration of the ecosystem as a write-in. Kind of ridiculous, but I still didn't kind of understand Trump back then because I didn't understand these levels of consciousness because angels hadn't revealed it to me. I kind of wish that I had back then. I regret actually not voting for him in some ways the past 2 times. I didn't vote for Trump either time. But Trump and the Republicans are seemingly in control of this Luciferian faction. And you might say, wait a minute, well, we're like the most high people, the people who are aligned with God and who are maybe like good Christians who really are taking on that love thy neighbor as thyself. Where are they? Well, I hate to tell you, but people like us are not heavily represented in the power structures of the world. You might have noticed that by the outcomes, right? Like the outcomes aren't exactly good. Like the best case scenario, it's ruthless, every man for himself. Capitalism is kind of the best that we get. And we don't get that very often. Usually we get crony capitalist, monopoly capitalist, Molochian nepotism kind of stuff where it's not merit-based at all. It's all about power relationships and that's it, right? So this week there's been some big things happening that play out to a large degree in politics. Remember, you can't just look at Republicans and say all Republicans are Luciferian, right? There are some most high people in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, very rare, but there's the House of Representatives is huge. So there's a few people in there, but they're probably, 1% or less of people, 3%, something like that. Very small minority. But the main consciousness within the Democratic Party at this point is Molochian consciousness, with perhaps a very tiny sliver of Luciferian. And the dominant consciousness among the Republican Party is Luciferian, but they still have a very large section, call them rhinos if you want, that is Molochian consciousness, that centralization piece. So I don't want you to come away with this as saying that this is all just coded for Democrat and Republican. It's not true. People like Mitch McConnell, right? Clearly Molochian. I think that there's good people, especially in the House of Representatives in the Democratic Party. Not many, but I think there are good people. I think some of them are compromised. They basically have a gun of some kind to their head, and I don't know what I would do in that situation. So I have to kind of have compassion for them. And I do feel that some amount of people in there are good. So I don't want people to come away with it. But one of the major manifestations, the major battleground is here in the United States. The New Atlantis, as Francis Bacon called this place, and the most dominant military power the world has ever seen. And we have technology far, 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 far beyond what others do, except for one other group, which I'm going to talk about tonight. And that group, I'm very curious because I don't fully understand them, and I don't even really know what to make of it. I'm going to touch on it briefly here, and then I'll come back to it. Robert Seffer had a video this week or last week about Antarctica, and it was on my radar, but then some of my students in my angelic magic class, I have 2 right now, and I'll give a shout out to everyone in the magic class. So if you're watching, hey Reese, hey Vinay, hey Elle, and then if you're watching, hey to Heather, hey to Jackie, hey to Anna, and hey to Max. So those are all the people, God, I hope I didn't forget anybody, I don't think so. Those are all the people in my angelic magic class. So one of them, I think it was Vinay, pointed out Robert Seffer, and I said, and I will say this to you, actually I'm segueing naturally into this subject, so I'm just going to do it because it's got momentum now. My opinion of Robert Seffer is he's one of the best people out there for certain kinds of research. When I made my Venetian Black Nobility series, I came to different conclusions than him, but he was one of a not insignificant amount of my research on that subject. And I feel that he does really good work quite often. However, he seems to have been caught up in the anti-Jewish egregore that splits people either into super fearful and hating of the Jews or into thinking that Jews can do no wrong when a certain amount of Jewish people are used by this Venetian Black Nobility as an administrative layer. And it's really a super minority of Jewish people anyway you slice it. And it's really gross when people fall into that it's the Jews crap, because it's just not true. It's these Venetians behind them. But it's important to keep that in mind with what I'm talking about here, which is that Robert Sephard appears to me to end up in kind of an anti-Jewish place, right? He's mostly an intellectual. Very often intellectuals fall into this trap because they tend to have more of a dead materialist background, especially if they're trained scientists, which soft science perhaps, but he's an anthropologist. That is true, and he just strikes me as someone who's primarily a materialist with an interest in the occult, primarily because of how it interfaces with power structures. It doesn't strike me to a huge degree of he appreciates it more that he studies it from an academic place. I could be wrong about that because he does talk about the esoteric a lot. Suffice to say, I want to put those caveats in that he also seems to be awfully pro 1930s, 1940s Germany to a questionable degree, especially when he's covering that subject. And this is a very interesting thing that he touches on here, because I believe that it's one of the most important groups on Earth that a lot of people don't even know exist. And that is, and this is, it's a good thing I'm moving everything over to other platforms, because this is kind of thing where you're over the target. Like when I talked about the parentage, or rather the grandmother of a certain singer that's dating a certain football player, I got dinged for something to do with health. But a friend of mine with 35,000 subscribers, 6 times the size of my channel, or 7, whatever that is, 7, I guess, he said much more explicit than me, and that video is still up. So the only thing I said in there that I didn't normally say was I talked about the lineage, the true lineage of that singer's parents, which ties into this whole milieu we're talking about with the Venetians. So Robert Sephard put us up this video about Antarctica and all those caveats, right? Go in there with that critical lens, but understanding like what he seems to be about and somewhat agitates for, in my opinion, right? Which is an anti-Jewish conclusion to the conspiracy matter, which I don't believe that's accurate, first and foremost. And secondly, I believe that it comes from a place of falling into this magical egregore that the Babylonian dark sorcerers have put in place in order to cloak their existence. But that barrier is weakening, because I'm far from the only person talking about this. So I just had to say that caveat about him. And I know it's very big, but I think it's a very serious subject, and one that you got to be very careful with. So he says, he puts this video up about Antarctica, and it checked all these boxes for me about Antarctica. All these boxes. And you should just go and watch it. But he had this guy I'd never heard of before on there named Jason Rice, right? That also could get me, get this channel nuked, but I don't care at this point because my videos are off of here. And so I have backup copies, and I'm just planning on advertising here. And if I get a strike, then I'll make it ultra milk toast and direct everyone to BitChute and Rumble and stuff. I mean, that's the eventual idea anyways, because they're clearly clamping down as the election ramps up. So go watch the Antarctica video by Robert Sephard. But this man, Jason Rice, he claims to be a member of the secret space program. And what he reveals is that the Germans went down and they found channels, and they successfully made their way into underground caves that were created basically by hot springs and by volcanic activity in Antarctica, and that they were able to use the natural barriers of Antarctica to make an insane submarine accessible only fortress that otherwise was under miles of ice and stone as well, right? So it's the long rumored Shangri-La on land Shangri-La that the submarine captain talked about, and all these. This guy, Jason Rice, like, holy smokes. Like, so much what he said, I was like, my claircognizance, that knowing, that ring of truth, the gift that I have, like, I could just hear it, like, almost everything he said until he started talking about ETs. I wasn't sure about that. But he basically said that the Germans, and he backed it up, and it's really worth watching. The Germans moved an insane amount of personnel to the Antarctica, like 300,000 people. And they did it in these gigantic special class of submarines. I'm just going to leave that up for now. This gigantic class of submarines that were something like some insane times bigger than the American and British subs of the exact same time. And they moved an insane amount of personnel. I do know that Borman figured out probably no later than 1943, but I think maybe even as early as late 42. Martin Bormann read the writing on the wall and realized that Germany was going to lose the war, but that the Nazi Party didn't have to. Germany was a physical location. The Nazi Party was a certain kind of ideology, and if you can call it that, ethos, right? And so they wanted to continue that and basically let Germany get taken out and choked out. And then it was even better for them because it's that trick of the Bavarian Illuminati / the usual suspects, where he goes, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing people he didn't exist, right? Greatest trick the Bavarian Illuminati ever pulled was getting people to think that it was gone, right? I'm certain it lasted at least into the 1800s, and it may very well exist today. I mean, a real deal, not all the, like, where they ask you to join with Facebook, right? Sorry, but I doubt they're asking, like, just about anyone I can imagine, like, to, like, join. It's all bloodline stuff for starters, usually. But anyways, in a similar vein, if you feign defeat, you can regroup and rebuild around advanced technology. Things like Die Glocke, where it seemed they had very, very, very primitive anti-gravity that also had some kind of temporal effect. It also was very radioactive. And you can look into my discussion with Walter Bosley on Die Glocke. If you're not familiar with that, and you're not familiar with the airship mystery of the 1800s and how it appears to be German, right, or Prussian, more accurately, that appears to be Prussian, that there was a beginnings of a breakaway civilization, German in character, going all the way back to the Teutonic Knights in the Fourth Crusade, and certain knowledge that they recovered from the library there at Constantinople. So interesting that in this German milieu, where we have like some amount of credible evidence, both in the form of the airship mysteries that Walter Bosley covers at depth, in his book, gosh, what is it called? Breakaway, I think. I have it over here in the wall. Let me grab it quick. No, Origin. Here's the book I'm referring to. Great book. And you can also watch the interview. Origin, the 19th century emergence of the 20th century breakaway civilizations. So Walter is a scholar and a gentleman. Actually, he really is truly both. But this idea that the Germans survived, right? Not just the Germans, but the Nazis, right? Very important distinction. Survived the end of World War II and maybe even thrived. There's a lot of evidence for that. What there's far less evidence, but persistent rumors of, since I was a kid. Since I was a kid, I heard rumors in the late 70s, early 80s, like almost as early as I could hear. I always, because I have a strong 8th house, astrologically speaking, I'm very attracted to the hidden, the occult, the esoteric, right? Hence this entire channel, right? It's very 8th house in character, Scorpio, Pluto energy, that same thing, right? Ever since I was a kid, I've heard persistent rumors that there was a Nazi base in Antarctica. And this Jason Rice guy just had insane amounts of information about it. And he contends that the Antarctic Treaty is actually a treaty between the Antarctic Germans and a group that he refers to as the Cabal, right? Which I don't like that because, again, that has that kind of anti-Jewish flavor to it because Cabal comes from Kabbalah, right? So, but it is fair to say that there is that there was a bad group that it appears that at some point in Nazi Germany came into direct conflict with around the time that they arrested the Rothschilds, right? And seized their assets. All of a sudden, that's when they went from the darlings of the world and the cover of Time magazine, all this kind of stuff, into suddenly they were the bad guys. Was that a role that was meant to be played all along, seeing as they were funded by the City of London and Wall Street? Quite possibly. I think so. But I think it goes deeper than that, and I think that there's a fundamental schism there. So he talks about how they basically just that they had cracked anti-gravity by 1946 or whenever it is when Robert Byrd goes down there with the military scientific expedition, ding, with like multiple carriers and destroyers and a submarine and stuff, right? And like 3,000 staff or something like that, Operation High Jump. They go down there with mega staff and they turn tail and some of the ships were damaged and they kind of never explain what happened. Again, persistent rumors, no concrete evidence, but persistent rumors for, again, I was hearing these back in the 80s, that we had gone down there and been attacked by Nazi UFOs, right? Because this theory was out there by no later than the 60s or 70s. And another thing I talk about often on this channel is that all true conspiracies get leaked. There's no such thing as perfect container of knowledge. Therefore, be suspicious of any conspiracy theory that arises out of whole cloth, out of nowhere, where there was no whispers of it since 2010, when Cass Sustein's plan from 2009 was launched, and that is, he said we have to do COINTELPRO for the truth movement. We got to get in there and have controlled opposition. We got to get in there and have fake conspiracy theories, right? Anything since that time, especially if it refers to something that happened a long time ago, that's a conspiracy, you should be suspicious of it. Because again, this Nazi underground Antarctica base is super out there fringe, right? With that, they have UFOs and all stuff, but I've been hearing about it since I was a kid, right? Because I was interested in this stuff and I'd read the weird parts of comic books or the incredible tales that adults would have lying around. I was always interested in that stuff, learning about Tesla when I was like 11 years old, and nobody knew who Nikola Tesla was in the 80s, but I knew about who he was, and learning about like the blast that happened, quite possibly related to Tesla over Russia, over Siberia. I can't remember what the name of that blast is, but I was into all that kind of stuff since I was a kid. And so when there's new stuff out of nowhere that there's no prior existing mythos about out there in the, in the conspiracy literature, you should be very suspicious of it, right? But this Antarctic German thing, I've been hearing about that my whole life. But this guy, he dumped all the data and he checked off all the boxes for me about what's happening down in Antarctica, the most important thing. I'm of the opinion that there are also ruins in Antarctica of an antediluvian civilization, perhaps an ultra ancient antediluvian civilization, possibly even also up to and including non-human civilization, stuff that's under the ice. I think that there is a less than 0% chance that it could be an entrance to the hollow earth, because the tube torus, that shape exists in nature. Flat plains really do not, right? And plus we could observe all the other planets. They're obviously spherical in nature, like et cetera, ad nauseum, go over that a million times. I actually think flat earth is a distraction, among other things, from the potential for hollow earth or honeycombed earth and deep underground military bases, which that is certainly true. That there's ancient vast tunnel systems. We can see it in Turkey, right? They found it under, I think it's not Göbekli Tepe, but that fairy chimney part, Cappadocia, I believe, is where they found it in Turkey. They found that could house 20,000, 30,000 people, underground city, vast, like miles of tunnels, right? Right. That's just one that we found. How many exist over how many iterations of human civilization? And so some people even say that the Nazis, where they got this tech, is from the inner Earth civilization, that they made contact with an inner Earth civilization that has super high technology. So I'm open to that also being there, any of that stuff. Relics from other civilizations, crashed alien ships, that's been another persistent rumor / revelation of the method since I was a kid. See John Carpenter's The Thing. John Carpenter is the king of revelation of the method, in my opinion, during his era. Him and the biggest one ever is Eyes Wide Shut. But yeah, so gosh, I lost my thread there. Darn it. Oh, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, crashed spaceships, any of that kind of stuff. I'm totally open to ruins and entrance to the inner Earth. But the most important thing geopolitically, I think, is they succeeded. They did indeed make underground cities, essentially, or under ice cities, under stone and ice, only accessible by submarines, thriving technological centers and mini cities in frickin' Antarctica. I know it's hard to believe, but man, I'm telling you, watch this Jason Rice guy and tell me if you don't come away frickin' convinced that he's largely onto something. And according to him, like, they're on Mars, they're off the planet in a big, big way. They maybe go out to Saturn. That they're just like way beyond the rest of the world in technology. And then you start thinking about certain things, right? Like, first of all, where do they fall in the consciousness? I'm not sure. That's a tricky one. It seems like the lower end of Luciferianism, which it would make sense that that's the part that cuts off the head of the rest of Molochianism. So they could very well be the vanguard of the Luciferian takeover. That leaves me with a sense of unease and dread, because I do not think these are good people. And I think anyone who's telling you that should be looked at very suspect. And I've noticed that that's been cropping up a lot. There's massive lies and obfuscations about what really happened in World War II. The most important case of that, in my opinion, was when Rudolf Hess took the stand at Nuremberg, and he said, he starts talking, and it seems like he's going nowhere. He starts talking about the strange behavior of British and Dutch politicians and power elite people, and how they would suddenly turn course and they would commit political or career suicide, clearly to work for the agenda of somebody else, seemingly against their own interests. And he gave all these examples of it, and they were just rambling, and they were like, where is he going with this? It was very smart how he puts this out there. And he said, yes, very odd behavior. And sometimes they'd have glassy eyes. And like, you really need to look at the eyes of these people and look at photos. It gets all this information out there. Brilliant. And enough people were taking a transcript of it. Look it up yourself, the transcript of Rudolf Hess when he talks about this. And then he says at the end of it, and of course, all those people, just like the high command here in Nazi Germany, were under heavy mind control. And they freak out and they grab Rudolf Hess and they frickin' cover his mouth and they pull him away. And he never is, I think, even interviewed ever again. He was in prison, supposedly. People say he's a body double, all kinds of crazy stuff. It's really hard to say. A lot of the Germans, like Himmler, I think, faked his death to get out of there. I think there was all kinds of shenanigans. Bormann died like 3 times, never really recovered his body. Obviously, Hitler, Neighbor Brown suspect. So there was a lot of weird stuff around that, the rat lines and all the rest of it in this Antarctic German group. But there also was very odd behavior during the Nuremberg trials, and certain books, like I think there's a book called Imperium, I think it is, are banned in the United States that talk about things about what went down in Germany and about, just the character of World War II in general. But I think people take that way too far when they suddenly make World War II Germany a sympathetic figure. And I see that a lot on the fringes of the truth movement, and it has me concerned when you consider what if the post-war Nazis escape, right? They're going to want revenge, obviously. Who would they want revenge on? Well, ask yourself, what 4 countries more than any other are kind of on the global shit list right now in various ways? Well, I would say, in terms of media, I would say the United States, right? Russia, Israel, and maybe an argument could be made for Great Britain. Those are the 4 primary enemies of the Nazis during World War II. What country in the West is the center of reason and calm debate and is the pioneer of 86,000 genders, right? Which has a link into mind control, right? Germany. It's the center of the EU. The EU actually is Germany. And by the way, one of the things Bormann wanted is to have a unified Europe with the digital, with a Deutschmark being the currency. And there's still some places that calculate Deutschmark values synthetically, because I think Germany always wants the option to pull out of the EU if it wants to, right? And so there's always a synthetic Deutschmark out there. And if you look at it, it's almost 1-to-1 or sometimes very often more valuable than a euro. So, yeah, if you look at how the EU sprang into existence, it was a bunch of coal and steel tariffs with Germany when they normalized relations. You know, I'll often put up, let me see if I can find this while I'm talking. I'll sometimes put up this meme on here that's very related to what we're talking about. And I think this post-war Nazi international is not discussed nearly enough. I'm certainly not any kind of pioneer, and I rely heavily on the research of people like dark journalists and I'm blanking on his names, DJ, Dr. Joseph Farrell. There's lots of people who've done lots of fantastic work on it, and I lean heavily. If I can see anything worthwhile, it's because I stand on the shoulders of actual scholars. So gosh, I really want to find this meme because it really sums up. Darn it, I'm gonna have to do a search real quick. It really sums up how much power the Nazis had out in the open, just right out in the open. I mean, you have things like Operation Paperclip, and the fact that half the CIA on the ground at the dawn of the CIA in 1947, interesting, after the Admiral Byrd thing, half the on-the-ground people in the CIA and all of the other side of the Iron Curtain assets were from Reinhard Gehlen and basically the Nazi spy apparatus, which he basically, in order to fake the dossiers for the scientists, most people know about the rocket scientists, Werner von Braun and stuff, but what a lot of people don't realize or kind of overlook is just how important this is, that at the founding of the CIA, something like 50% of the ground assets and almost 100% of the ground assets behind the now emergent Iron Curtain were Nazis. Not like rhetorically speaking, 21st century when someone misgendered you, but actual examples of National Socialism from Germany, right? That really happened. If you consider that, how much power they had there at the founding of the CIA, a lot of things about the CIA make a lot of sense, and it looks a lot like the CIA and the burgeoning aerospace industry in the United States defense vortex, right, or complex, was utterly dominated by Nazis, and certainly NASA was, right? Think of the implications of that if you add to the fact that the Nazis were having this breakaway civilization, and they went to work penetrating all the corporations and all the cabinets globally of basically the entire planet. According to Jason Rice, and he makes a very compelling argument for it. And I know enough about Dr. Joseph Farrell's work about the post-war Nazi international that this sounds right on the money to me. That then, begs the question, like, what does that mean? What does that mean for like what's unfolding right now and what might happen? The situation in Israel and the sudden 180-degree turn by a lot of the media in its coverage of Israel, especially outside the United States. It's still quite pro-Israel prevalent in the United States, but that's not true elsewhere in the world at all. And public opinion certainly has got to be at an all-time low right now around Israel because of what's happening in Gaza is an absolute atrocity. Any way you slice it, So it looks to me like, to some degree, like Israel's being set up here to be a scapegoat, and that could really kick off things there in the Middle East. And of course, there's all the revelations and the fact that both the Molochians and the Luciferians have an agenda at play in a lot of Book of Revelations type prophecy. And there's other prophecies in Islam and Judaism that also come into play in it. Like there's plans within plans about that because it's such a big piece, like, are we about to see the Antichrist? Have we already? One of the things about the Antichrist, I've done Obama was my pick for a minute there because he was young at the time. He was insanely charismatic. It seemed like everyone globally liked him. And I also knew he was evil, right? Like deep down, I knew this guy was evil, but he's clearly Molochian. I think the Antichrist will be Luciferian, actually. And it's interesting because, gosh, I'm trying to think of his name. Nostradamus, his name for the Antichrist was Mabus, M-A-B-U-S. So what happens if you drop the vowels? You get M-B-S. Has there any figure that has those initials who's incredibly charismatic, charming, hyper-intelligent, hyper-ambitious, has suddenly appeared on the field of geopolitics in the past, say, 6 or 7 years, is fantastically wealthy, immediately did massive power moves, and is consolidating and completely rearranging his country in a way that's unprecedented? Yeah. And his name's Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. That could be the guy, right? He's also, because he's from the House of Saud, that means he's Jewish, because he's from one of the followers of Sabbatai Levi, who converted to Islam. And they're sometimes called the, oh God, what's the word for these people? I can't think of it. It's not crypto. There's a word for this specific group out of Iran, of Jewish people who converted to Islam. I believe it was in Iran, under Sabbatai Levi, and I cannot think of them for the life of me. But bin Salman's from that, and being from that bloodline, you know, I've always imagined that. No, it's not crypto. There's a name for these Jewish people who the House of Saud is. Who's really running the show? Yeah, I mean it's currently, but it's about to change, the Molochian, Babylonian black magicians and the priesthood. Anyways, I was hoping someone answered my question of what the name for this particular group is. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Damn it, it's driving me bonkers. Anyways, you can look it up later. You'll see what I'm talking about. The House of Saud, they're actually Jewish, but they're from these followers of Sabbatai Levi, who mass converted to Islam, basically because he had a sword to his throat. So they mass converted to Islam. He mass converted to Islam at the end of his life. So I just think it's really interesting to consider, like, boy, Jason Rice's description of what has happened with the post-war Nazi International, right? The Antarctic Germans, he calls them, and their penetration, particularly their penetration of security apparatus and corporate boardrooms and politicians around the world. It sure sounds exactly like my understanding given to me of the angels of what the Luciferians have done to the Molochian ruling group. And it gave me a lot of pause, and I have a lot to think about that, and I'm not sure. And so that brings me to switch gears. I'm going to talk about Golden Age Enclaves, but I think I'm going to talk about something I've been talking about with, I was going to talk about politics stuff, but I'm kind of over it. Like, the only thing that really interests me that I want to talk about just real quick about Shadow War is that the Trudeau government, virologists who transferred Ebola to Wuhan had clandestine relationship with Chinese agents. Bombshell intel reveals. It's from Countersignal, is reporting about this. That is a pretty monster story. I've long held that there was a chance that the EU Molochians were going to leave the CCP Molochians on the hook in a modified limited hangout and blame them and try and push all the blame onto Bill Gates, Fauci, and the Chinese, and try and wipe the WF hands of their obvious hand in that, right? And try and like do a modified limited hangout that it was just some rogue people like Fauci, Gates, right, who have both been set up for extreme hatred, like 3 minutes hate cell, worthy of hate, but also look to me like they're being set up. And then the Chinese government looks to me like it's also maybe being set up by the Molochian WEF. And I think that they realize that. And I think that's part of what has caused this rift between the CCP Molochians and the WEF Molochians. So, yeah, I don't want to talk anymore about politics. There's just tons of stuff about Trump and frickin', every day there's more stuff. Oh, one thing I do want to hit is Elon Musk suing OpenAI. That seems really important to me and a story worth following. And he's trying to force them to go open source, which of course would reveal all the embedded woke stuff you know, like, and how ridiculous that it obviously is. And that's what they're really hiding, is they're hiding eat the bugs and let's have, you know, men in women's clothing swinging their butts around in front of kindergartners as though that's even remotely appropriate, regardless of the attire, right? So, or identification. So I want to talk about this idea of an esoteric version of the Second Amendment. So there's really no talking to religious people about this, and I just accept that. But for people who aren't religious, I want you to consider something. So if you look in the Abrahamic faith, despite an extremely magical Old Testament and actually lots of magical happenings in the New Testament, also lots of magical happenings in the Quran, it's a bit odd that they're like, and ever from this point forward, miracles and magic and astrology are evil. Never mind that astrology soup or flourished during the Islamic Golden Age. Like, that's really astrology. Western astrology owes a tremendous amount, almost everything, to the Arab astrologers of the first millennia, right? And into a bit into the second millennia, you know, AD. Like, they were the light of reason in the world when Europe was like having bubonic plague because people took a bath once a year and frickin' threw shit in the streets, right? So back then the Arabs were holding it down for reason, and really kind of, I guess you could say, the Luciferian impulse, interestingly enough, or Luciferian and most high impulse, this higher spirituality and higher learning and higher science. But over time, it's come that the Abrahamic faiths say that astrology is evil. Don't listen to it, right? There's 3 astrologers that freaking go and find Jesus, and this is key, the angels come to the astrologers. And this is key, the astrologers then very carefully protect baby Jesus by leaving in a clandestine way through a different route, because they made the mistake of going to King Herod first. And King Herod said, tell me when you find this king among infants who was born, who is the most powerful king you've ever witnessed. Oh, wise magi from the east, right? Astrologers from the east and magi, they're magicians, right? And then the angels come to them, so they're clearly holy men, and they saved Jesus. But astrology is bad. Dude, literally, religion doesn't exist if it wasn't for astrologers saving his bacon by, you know, like Herod would have found out from other astrologers eventually that this had happened. So if these fantastic, probably Vedic astrologers hadn't realized that this great soul had been born, Jesus might have been killed by Herod and his purge. So literally, it's possible that Christianity doesn't exist without astrologers. Certainly, astrologers played an immediate, impactful, critical role in his life and keeping him alive. Like, that is a bare minimum. So why would looking up at the stars and understanding what that means be bad? It doesn't even, I mean, it just literally doesn't make any sense. Unless, of course, you're powerful people. And remember, JP Morgan famously said, and I often tell this to my wealthy clients, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. And he said this back in the 1900s, when that's close to, you know, that's at least a centibillionaire in today's money. If you were a billionaire back then, or a trillionaire, actually, I think that if you take Rockefeller's fortune at its peak and convert those dollars to now, especially if you have anything remotely approaching accurate inflationary metric, it's over $1 trillion fortune that Rockefeller had at his peak. And JP Morgan was right up there with him, although he was a front man for Rothschild, blah, blah, blah. But the point is that he used an astrologer very regularly. And he's not alone. These people use astrology and magic all the time. So then they came with a much better way of suppressing magic, right? They used the Abrahamic faiths for centuries to root out and destroy any potential rival magicians, right? This is why I'm saying it's the esoteric Second Amendment. We have a right to use magic to defend ourselves, and we have a right to use magic to make this world a better place. And we have an inalienable right to look at the motion of the heavens to determine the will of God. It's our birthright. All of civilization did it until about 170 years ago, when the British Royal Society came up with a much more clever way of destroying it than the Abrahamic faiths. And that was, they changed science in 2 fundamental ways. They said, no more multidisciplinary and generalists who are able to see tons of different things, because we want to compartmentalize science, and just have a few corrupt generalists that we can control at the top, who can put it all together, who can put all that information together the same way the Prussians broke up the school day with bells because of Pavlov's stuff. And that way the working class would have the subject separated by the bells. And then in the rich kid classes, the symposiums, they would go between philosophy and science and economics and warfare and history and tactics and math and music theory. And they would weave through them all because it's all one, because it's all a study of the world. But the Prussians got it divided, and they divided it by bells to psychologically have that in place. So in a similar way, compartmentalization, they wanted to compartmentalize science, but they did something else, something far more dangerous and egregious. And that is that they they forced anyone who wanted to be part of the scientific establishment and have any credibility at all, you had to be a dead materialist. That is, you had to believe that men were just somehow animated soulless meat machines, and that there's no such thing as magic, certainly not. All those esoteric arts, all the energy our ancestors spent on it, all the temples they built, totally related to astrology, all of that should be ignored. All of that is trash. Those people didn't know, even though they had a higher cranial capacity back then. Those people were ignorant savages, despite the fact that they built buildings, some of which would be difficult, if not impossible, to replicate today. This is the claim that was made. And just like evolution and a bunch of other stuff that were, and social Darwinism in particular, it was unquestioned. They just made the assertion. There was no need to prove it. They made very weak, hand-wave, vague explanations for why social Darwinism was okay, or these various different things. And the same thing here with dead materialism. They just stamped it out. And the result of that is that for generations, the elites have had a monopoly on things like astrology, magic, hatha yoga, and other pranic breathing techniques, and all manner of esoteric knowledge. And this is true of both this Antarctic Germans, I'm certain, have a very occult aspect to them. They must. They took unimaginable amounts of esoteric library with them, the Thule Society and the Anunnaki Society, and the other massively funded esoteric study and occult specialist groups that they had. It was told that when the Russians invaded, I forget what it was, Poland or some part of Germany, where the Anunnaki had this library, that there was some unimaginable amount of trucks that were taking away just incredible amounts of books, like 40,000 volumes, or maybe it was 400,000 volumes. I can't remember. It was some staggering amount of esoteric and occult literatures, some of which was insanely rare. They had scoured all of Europe and wherever they went in Asia, right? There's an epic poem, which I forget the name of, in Tibet, that the Germans found a fully complete version of it. And they were among the first to try and translate this into a language other than whatever that Tibetan language is. And so they scoured all that stuff, and they certainly took it extremely seriously. And they had enormous breakthroughs that persistent rumor and myth has it were directly related to the Brill Society and others making contact with other beings, whether it's an inner Earth civilization, that's one rumor, extraterrestrials, that's another rumor, demonic forces, or these aren't mutually exclusive. All three could be true. They probably tried everything and left no stone unturned, and they were obsessed with finding everything they could about Atlantean technology. Was one of the main things they wanted to find. So, yeah, they kept all of this for themselves. And the Luciferians, as part of their agenda in the 60s, they helped bring about this New Age movement, and they brought over a lot of Eastern teachings like chakras and meditation and yoga and all this kind of stuff, and reincarnation, right? Hey, baby, what's your sign? I think I met you in a past life. It became cheesy. It was so cliche by the 70s. But this was a huge surge in spiritualization among humanity. And it caused immediate shockwaves throughout the world. And yes, there was social engineering to eventually bring about current cancel culture nonsense, all that kind of stuff. That was definitely part of what went wrong. But there was nested operations. There was the Molochian operation to break down the family, and that's how the Luciferians sold it to the Mafia Don Molochians. But the Luciferians had their own agenda inside of that. Start destabilizing things by spiritualizing things, because they know that will destabilize the dead materialist Molochian cult. So what I'm saying is that while I don't agree with the Luciferians about much, I do think that there are useful esoteric skills and abilities that we should not leave dusty in a cart someplace. We should use it for good. And you can. And I'm living proof, because ever since I started working with the angels, my life has become more harmonious. I've become happier. I've become kinder. I've become more patient. I've become less angry. I've actually become more masculine. I've stepped more into my divine masculinity and away from my dark feminine, like sort of beta male energy that I was stuck in by conditioning, because I didn't want to be the dark masculine Andrew Tate. I hated those kind of guys. And I didn't realize there was the Aragorn, a third option of being divine masculine rather than being dark feminine or dark masculine. But they always want us in the dark feminine or the dark masculine. Same with women. Instagram, OnlyFans, dark feminine. And then you have the dark masculine, Ally McBeal, hyper cutthroat, I don't need no man, boss babe kind of thing. Both of which are, all four of these are really antinatalist psyops in the sense of none of those lead to good homes. None of those outcomes really lead to good homes. So as I've worked through my own shadow with the help of the angels, like my life has become truly miraculous. And I believe that they've literally saved my life, actually. I'm not going to go into that story now. Someday I'll reveal how, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the angel saved my life. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. There's no way I survived that circumstance, and other people would have died if it wasn't for angelic intervention for a very long period of time. And so I literally owe my life to the angels. And I also owe all this beauty and harmony coming into my life. And Yeshua said, you shall know them by their fruits. And this applies to spirits as much as it does to men. You should be wary and careful of disembodied beings, because quite a lot of them are malevolent, but you should know them by the fruits. And so if you learn how to do white magic for the upliftment of humanity, if you learn how to read karmas and you read the destiny of humanity and the stars and God's plan, because that's what it is. Astrology is the study in many ways of God's plan, both in macrocosm, what's happening in the heavens above, and then microcosm for the individual soul as they journey through this world. And I can say that both of these things have vastly enriched my life and my understanding of the world. And so the same arguments for why not to use magic and astrology sound an awful lot to me like arguments the gun control left makes for why the American citizenry should be disarmed. It's appeal to authority. It's people aren't responsible, or, oh, it's just evil and I don't need to address it more than that. Some book said it, right? I don't need to consider whether this book, which is clearly edited, might have had stuff inserted or taken out of it for mind control purposes. I'm a big believer in Jesus Yeshua and love his teachings, but his teachings are not pure. They went through several councils, including the Council of Nicaea, when many books were left out and very few books were kept. And I believe that there was edits to those remaining books. There's beauty and wonder, and you can surrender to Jesus, and that is like a totally valid path back to the Most High. But Jesus, I hate to break it to you, was a magician. That's what the miracles are. He was a super high vibrational, unimaginably high EQ and IQ, one of a kind, solar avatar, man who became a god, but he was a magician, among other things. And so you absolutely can use magic and appeal to the angels and work with the angels to bring about more harmony here on earth. And I think it's time people start considering looking into that and doing their own research and thinking for themselves and getting outside of their programming about it. Because for me, it's been absolutely revolutionary and life-changing. And I don't see it as being, I see it as being against certain sects of Christianity, but I don't see it being against the core teachings at all. I know that there might even be stuff where he specifically supposedly says it in there, it just doesn't make any sense to me given his own life and what we know about him. So I just think that, like a lot of things in there, that there's a mind control opponent that was put in ex post facto in order to create a religion and a mind control cult. And again, that doesn't invalidate the teachings of Jesus Yeshua. It means that we only have fragments of them, things like love thy neighbor as thyself and other teachings that were beautiful. And you can kind of tell when you read them because they're super high vibrational and they bring about unity, not division. You know, no other before me, or you're either with me or against me, right? Bush was quoting the Bible. Yeah, it really makes sense. This loving God that Jesus clearly is like an emissary for, is, depending on how you look at it, says you're either with me or you're against me. Just it doesn't wash. Whereas him being like a beautiful, enlightened being who's like ascended to deity and is super worthy of worship and all that kind of stuff, I'm totally think that's beautiful, and I would never talk anyone out of that. The problem is when it becomes bigoted and limiting, and when the mind control comes in about a whole lot of things, and not least among them, in my opinion, is getting people to demonize astrology and responsible magic. When I teach my angelic magic classes, one of the things I hammer home is safety, 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 and ethics, ethics, ethics. The ethical use of magic to never impinge upon the free will of another sovereign being. And whenever you want to do magic and you think it might influence someone else, you have to put in the caveat of, you'll always say when you make your request to the angels, if it is in my soul's highest good and in accordance with the divine plan of the Most High. And then when it impacts others, you'll say, and honoring the free will of all who are involved. And then that magic will only influence them if their higher self that can look down upon their soul and knows what's in their soul's best interest is like, yeah, that's amenable to me. That doesn't harm me in any way. Sure, I'm a judge in a divorce case and your child would go to his abusive alcoholic father because he has, he has a really great attorney because he's really wealthy, and you're a poor woman who's suddenly struggling against this juggernaut of a lawyer, and now you're using angelic magic to even the playing field, and the judge goes, yeah, sure, I'll rule in your favor. That's fine. Like the influence magic, I accept that. Thanks for asking, right? Because you can't ask the judge. She's going to be like, what are you talking about? Or no, right? But you can ask his higher self. And that's how you can do something like influence magic. But you need to be super careful. You need to be super nuanced in how you use it, because you are putting yourself as a co-creator of this realm, and that has a huge karmic impact for you. So if you do good works for the upliftment of humanity or to protect the innocent, like this child that you're protecting from a DV alcoholic father who's wealthy, right? In that scenario, if you're using it to help bring about more harmony and grace to the world, right? And that can include taking care, make sure you have a roof over your head. That's okay. You can provide for yourself. Then you can start making this world a more harmonious place. And it can really benefit you personally. And it's had a huge benefit for me. And as I worked up the spheres, it became less and less about what the angels could do for me, which is the kind of magic I was just talking about, versus as you move up the spheres. And I talk about this in other live streams in more detail. There's one a couple weeks back where I talk about the angelic choirs in detail. Go check it out if you're interested. I need to do a new angel magic video anyway, but they start teaching you to be in service and eventually to just do inner work so you can get rid of all your shadow and not get rid of it, like expunge it, but actually come out of judgment around it and love it and heal it and integrate it and come to terms with it. And, a lot of times as you come to terms with it, there's no charge to maybe do this shadow aspect. I mean, it's a bit like the Jungian shadow work, but it's a bit different than that. But that's a good way to look at it, as the Jungian shadow work. And that the angels had me do that more and more. And now I'm just like, everybody knows me and has known me for any length of time. It's just like, wow, what has happened to you? Like, you're so much nicer. Like, I was always kind of, not to man harm, but I'm reasonably smart and I'm reasonably charming, and I've always been that way. But I always had edge, and I was always angry and upset, and like very often I would sort of like be unhinged and lash out and get upset in certain kinds of situations. And now those kind of things don't really bother me. I'm just much more peaceful as a general rule, and I have a lot more patience, and I'm a lot kinder to other people, and I've just become a lot more of an agent for harmonious change on this planet. And that leads me into the Golden Age Enclaves, which I just want to talk about a little bit. One of the most intriguing things that the angels have revealed to me, which also has become a mandate they've given to me, is this concept of the Golden Age Enclaves. The angels contend that during the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age of the Kali Yuga, the Iron Age, the Molochians have a natural law right to, in order for the spiritual development of humanity at that time, right? And here being accepting of the idea of karma and reincarnation is really helpful in understanding how the world works, because otherwise this world just kind of looks like a nightmare, Satan's playground, right? Which is a very popular concept out there, that this is some kind of prison planet, as opposed to we're just about out of this low ebb of consciousness and things are about to get a lot better. But during the Kali Yuga, the Molochians can go around and massacre and enslave and torture and otherwise wipe out the Most High. And in fact, they do it every chance. The Molochians can't seem to recognize that Luciferians are not them, because they observe that the Luciferians behave in a very similar way to them, and they're quite dull. So there's a cloak of confusion for the Molochians around the Luciferians. Likewise, Most High people tend to see Luciferians as dangerous and evil, and they're not entirely wrong. So there's that cloak of Luciferian confusion around them. But the Molochians will come after the Most High people, and they kind of ignore or work with or interact with, in a much more kind of friendly-ish manner, the Luciferians. Although, of course, they'll betray them and do whatever else, right? And power, politics stuff. But they tolerate them. Whenever the Molochian civilization ran into Most High civilizations, they always wiped them out, pretty much like completely cleansed them from the map. Whereas when they'd run into violent tribal people, those people often are still around today, because then quite often, but not always, those Molochians would come to some kind of, be like, hey, you know what? I like the cut of your jib, the way you go around and kill all these like innocent settlers and stuff. Yeah, those people who just were trying to have a better life, but then they saw you as a threat, you saw them as a threat, and you just killed all those white people, including the children. We like the cut of your jib, whatever tribe. You know, and if they weren't wiped out by smallpox or whatever, a lot of those tribes that were more aggressive survived. And most of the tribes that were less aggressive were wiped out like to a child, right? And this happened again and again. You see with the Cathar suppression. And every time that energy comes out, obviously Jesus, Yeshua, the Molochians recognize it and they crucify it. They go out of their way not just to kill it, but to torture it on the way out. They really, really, really hate it. And they hate innocence and that energy, because for a split second, they have to reflect on their own disconnect from source and their own core trait of self-hatred. So they hate it and they root it out and they try and invert it and destroy it, because it's godliness and they want to destroy and kill God. So when they see something that reminds them of God, it makes them fly off the handle and go into a rage and genocidal rampage. So the angel said that the Luciferians have a karmic right and a natural right to completely wipe out to a man the Molochians over the next 5-7 years. That they're pretty much going to wipe them out. There'll probably be little tiny surviving pockets, but they'll have no power, and they'll go into extreme hiding. And the vast majority of them will be hunted down and either extrajudiciarily killed or brought before a kangaroo court, Nuremberg 2.0. It's no mistake that that phrase has been out there again and again and again and again, because it points to something much deeper. Not just that there'll be crimes against humanity trials, which is what a lot of people think that means, but it also means that it will be a kangaroo court with foregone conclusion and a very controlled release of some aspects of what happened that will be favorable to the newly ascendant ruling Luciferians. However, and here's the good news, the angels have also revealed to me, and I've since looked up an actual official Luciferian doctrine, which to my shock and surprise and joy affirmed this. The angel said, when the Kali Yuga is over, you will be able to create what they described as Golden Age Enclaves. And someone was suggesting today we reband it. And I'm like, I see what they're saying, but I don't want to, because it comes from the angels, right? Like I could see like some kind of rebranding effort, perhaps, especially depending on like what localities, if you had to do it for whatever reason to be respectful or not incite the wrath of the locals, right? But they described them as Golden Age Enclaves, and they said that within these self-sufficient communities that would be able to trade with other like-minded self-sufficient communities and the dominant Luciferian culture, which will be the dominant culture on the planet, the Luciferians will be A-okay with a parallel culture as long as that culture does not try to attack them or take over. If there's any attempt to attack them or take over through any forceful means, as opposed to espousing the philosophy, it's possible I could see them maybe banning Most High philosophy and spiritual teachings. I could perhaps see that, but I don't think so. I think they'd allow it and just try and mock it and corrupt it. What they won't do is destroy these Golden Age Enclaves. They won't destroy them, and they won't enslave the people. And what I found on I think it was philosophy.org, something like that. It was some very plain named thing under Luciferian, and I found it elsewhere. It says that Luciferian tenet is they hate Satanists. They think free will is of critical importance, right? They believe in like betterment of humanity and consent, all the stuff. And they also said their attitude towards the Abrahamic faith, where the Satanists are very often hostile, they have a live and let live philosophy. Meaning if they're left alone, they'll leave you alone. And they'll just assume, because one of the things the Luciferians have is they're cocky. They're super cocky, and they're cocky with good reason, because they're absolutely crackling with intelligence. They're, of the three states of consciousness, they're the most intelligent, but they lack wisdom. They lack wisdom, and they lack true connection to source, but they're dizzyingly smart, and they're incredibly accomplished, and they tend to be hyper disciplined, hyper competitive, hyper ambitious, right? They know that they can win, especially if they're going to reach underneath and tilt the table a little bit, which they will, because the Luciferians definitely believe in taking rules and bending them to just the point of breaking. They're totally fine with lies and propaganda. They're totally fine with deceit and deception of all kinds. They thrive in it. They love it. Sometimes the Molochians are more honest in a way, because they can't help but vomit out their true intentions. Eat the bugs, drink. Hey, yeah, you guys should all drink the piss beer. I'm Bill Gates. Oh, probably sound more like Jordan Peterson there, but similar, right? So, yeah, that whole thing where recently the Molochians kind of don't have Luciferians to coach them. Hey, don't say, hey, just Klaus, when you go out there, don't start talking about the bugs thing again, and about how there's nothing you like better than a $10,000 an hour hooker who is like gagged, but then she's force-fed bugs. Oh, yeah, why'd you have to tell me that right before I got on stage? Oh, it's the bugs. Yeah, eat the bugs, right? Just let the crazy out, Klaus. Like, why not? You're going to win. There's no way you could lose. Look how ascendant and powerful you are. WF, just speak directly into the microphone your actual honest intentions. And meanwhile, the Luciferians, by contrast, are going, yeah, guys, we're the white hats. Yeah, white hats. That's the ticket. We're the good guys. Yeah, we're the good guys who just trust the plan while the kids are getting the you-know-whats. Yeah. No, of course white hats wouldn't have a break a few eggs to make an omelet mentality. No, that would be more like gray hats, like Luciferians. So Luciferians are disguising themselves in their true intentions and their true motivations, and what they want is a global, technocratic, high surveillance, high technology, global civilization, and they want humanity off Earth in a big way as fast as possible. Not abandoning Earth, but they want us to massively colonize the rest of the galaxy. That's what that deity wants more than anything else. I've been toying with the idea of recently of, I'm not sure how the Yugas, I'm not sure if they're universal off this planet. They might be, because of Bibbo Dev Mizra's theory about the active galactic nucleus blast of light from the center that raises all the consciousness. It could be actually that the Yugas are true, and what part of the Yuga you're in depends on where you are in that plasma light wave from the galactic center, or the nadir, which is what the Kali Yuga is when it's darkness, right? So depending on where you are in the galaxy kind of tells you where what you're experiencing in any given moment. right? But it doesn't seem like there's a way to completely avoid it, because eventually you get to the edge of the galaxy. If you try and move along with the Kali Yuga or something like that, or move along with the Dwapara Yuga, you would eventually reach the outer edge of the galaxy. And I don't know what happens outside of that. So I'm not sure if there's an attempt to escape the Yugas, or if it's just, all I know is that the being known as Lucifer wants to create a galactic empire, 100%. And so in order to do that, you have to reveal anti-grav, you have to reveal free energy, right? People who are like caught up in this black pilling thing where they think that everyone's going to die. If everyone is going to die, why are they spending so much time on this new financial system? If everyone's going to be cut cold down to 500 million that are mostly sex slaves, or people who are chipped and in like tubes and getting bug paste fed to them, you know, and they're trapped in some kind of metaverse hellscape, right? The WEF Great Reset plan. Why are they going through so much trouble for this new financial architecture, which is clearly scalable and granular, meaning it can go up to, there's aspects of it that they're trying to achieve with like XRP, it seems, where they want to have endless liquidity for macro transactions, but they also want to have granular transactions of, like, this gentleman I was talking to today talked about how they were using XRP in Bangladesh at a street vendor level, like through someone's phone, to purchase like little like jerky sticks or whatever, like these little meat sticks of some kind. And so that's a very granular level. And they seem to be expanding certain things around civilization and surveillance and high-tech infrastructure, that why would you go to that trouble if you think everyone's going to die for either of these things? You wouldn't. But if you were in the process of making a new system to take over for the old one, and you were going to get rid of these old codger Molochians, who are mostly actually chronologically old as well, right? Reverse tip of the hat to Jacob Rothschild. May you not ever burden this planet again. Yeah, that like octogenarian, septuagenarian, whatever set is primarily Molochian consciousness, the dominant powers that are older. But the young bucks, the Gen X and millennial people, are ready to shove them out. And I mean, it's not just a generational thing, but it is an old, dying form of consciousness. And there's this new consciousness about to replace it. And that new consciousness is clearly planning for a densely populated, global, high-tech civilization, which they would not be if they thought there was some star on the edge of the galaxy, or I mean, the edge of the solar system that was going to come in, or planet Nibiru, and we're going to die. If they didn't have some kind of answer to whatever the reset is of the Yugas, then they would write like things like the Younger Dryas impact, or perhaps like a micronova from the sun, things like that, right? If they didn't have some kind of answer to that, why would they be bothering building out all this infrastructure? Like, is that all just a super, hyper, ultra, giga elaborate psyops? I don't think so. It looks like they're putting a new financial system in place that they expect to be the thing for like the next 50 years with some amount of tooling. Like, that seems pretty obvious to me. It's also even set up to where it could be interplanetary within our solar system pretty easily, I think. So, you know, when you add that all together, this looks like there's a sophisticated group that's ready to take over, and that they plan on having a high-tech global civilization that has quite a lot of population density. And that's all very good news as far as I'm concerned. And so the idea that we would be able to, in parallel to that, make these Golden Age Enclaves, which is something, you know, I'm in the process of fleshing out. The gentleman I was talking with today, he talked about the need for like people to start really talking about what that means and planning around the financial aspect, like finding land. You know, I want to do it on ley lines and use sacred geometry. And I mean, some things have been shown, but it's certainly not just for me to do. There'll be lots of people involved in it. And I will hope to be able to contribute in whatever way I can. But there'll need to be a lot more fleshing out of this idea. But in essence, it'll be an area wherein that consciousness will be allowed to grow and thrive and unfold for the first time in 6,000 years. And it's in a very early state, and the gravity of the collective consciousness right now is very much still in Molochian. It's just about to tick up into Luciferian, which will then have that higher ebb of Luciferianism. That is the lower ebb of most high consciousness. And from that space, we'll be able to move into the highest form of consciousness. And eventually those little Golden Age enclaves, they're also described as been described to me as the seeds of the Golden Age. And for the first time, people will be able to actually have areas where we can trust each other enough to implement things that we've always kind of wanted to do for a long time, like egalitarian societies where people have different rules, but everyone has respect, but everyone works and everyone contributes and everyone tries to help the children, and we have to educate the children and heal everybody of trauma. Like there's a lot of work to be done on this, and it's still at a very early stage, but it's very exciting to me, this concept of that we'll be able to, for the first time, have a safe space, sound like a liberal here, safe space for our kind of people, and we'll have to heavily vet that. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of planning that needs to go into it, a ton of it outside of my wheelhouse, but I hope to contribute in whatever kind of way that I can. And so I'm very excited about that possibility and a way that we can all move forward and try and make this world a more harmonious place. So I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break, and I'm going to maybe 7 minutes top, and I'm going to just run out and do some things, and then I'll be right back. And then if you want to put up questions to the side, or if you want to shout out, put your name up in the side and just say, hey, Ian, or whatever. I'll give you a shout out. And I'm trying to I can always find my break screen when I don't need it. Oh, there it is. All right. We'll get that up, and then we'll share it. And then I will go run and take a break. And so I got to mute, and I'm going to do it. See you guys in about 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, that might have been a little fast. I just tried to breeze through it. Let me pull up. Yeah, so I just want to sort of tie off, before we go into the Q&A here, I want to tie off something else about the Golden Age Enclaves. So the gentleman I was talking to today was great guy. I look forward to talking to him more. And G, if you're watching, good to see you, brother. He's a very private man, so I just don't want to say it. I'm not trying to be mysterious to be sexy or cool, guys. I literally can't talk about some of the stuff just out of respect for people, in their privacy. I've made a conscious decision, which I actually am in the process of really paying for being in the public eye. And like, it's actually been kind of hard now that I've sort of become this, corner of a corner of a corner of a corner of the weird part of YouTube, right? What do they call it? Internet micro niche, internet niche micro celebrity, I guess is the term, when you have a few thousand followers or whatever. But once you start to have more people paying attention to you, they say that you, especially if you're in this subject matter, the truth of the world, you attract spooks, right? And kooks. And the kooks thing is actually the thing that's more heartbreaking for me, is when, and by the way, like, if you're a former angelic magic student, I love you, brother. Definitely not talking about you here, so I just want to be clear about this. But you'll sometimes attract people who are very traumatized and very unstable, and they really want your help, and it's just like, you can't do it. And like, I'm to the point now where I can't even respond to like comments, and like, I'm missing actual business emails because of other stuff, because people ask me questions, and I want to be nice and helpful and all this stuff, but like, then I actually can't. I just am spread too thin, and like, I have a teenage son, and I have a business I'm trying to run, and this channel acts to some degree as an advertisement for the business, but like, there's a lot that I got to do. I got to do research, and I'm trying to like have a few moments of sanity for myself and my own spiritual growth and changes and leveling up, which has had a lot of angst and a lot of purging involved with it, as like sort of like different tiers have been had. I've really had to grapple with self-worth issues. All this kind of stuff has come up, so it's been kind of challenging. I can't remember where I was going with that. Oh, well, yeah. So I'm talking about honoring people's privacy. Sorry. So the Golden Age Enclaves, what I wanted to say was, people ask me like, what can you do? And like, what's a good strategy for now? Like, the guy said, well, what can we do today? Like, look at all the instability in the horizon. I said, yeah, I know. And kind of my advice to people is a fewfold. Number one, survive, because the next few years are going to be dicey. I think most people probably are attracted to this channel. It's a very tiny minority of humanity that's seeing it. Probably most people are attracted to this channel and watch it for more than a fleeting moment. Probably are going to make it, and not because, if you watch Ian's channel, then you automatically make it. No, more so that people who are going to make it would be attracted to this material. It's the Hermetic principle of like attracting like. And you find other people, I'm sure, like out there that are amazing truthers or whatever that you resonate with, and right, and those people are going to make it. And let's face it, like, if you're interested in the kind of content that you find in this channel, you're pretty inquisitive, which means probably higher intelligence, more discernment, more critical thinking. You're just much more likely to make it. But nonetheless, if you haven't already, take care of practical physical stuff and then start doing the inner work, and that's applicable to everyone. But also, I think there's a lot of economic instability that's on the horizon and currently underway, and there's going to be a vast transfer of wealth along two main routes as far as I can see, which is precious metals and select cryptos. The cryptos are much trickier to discern, and really gold and silver is the only sure bet, and that's why I always recommend that. But don't make the mistake that money is evil. People go, money is the root of all evil. No, that's not what the saying is. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. That means when you love money more than you honor connections with others, more than you develop a relationship with yourself even, right? When you love money above all else, then that's the root of all evil. I don't even think that's true. It's actually, I think it's the love of power, but power and money are virtually the same thing, right? There are layers of power above money, but not much, right? And money can get you an awful lot of power. So it's really the love of power, and power for others, right, is the root of all evil. And that I agree with. But money is not bad. But teaching you that money is bad and that rich people who have resources is bad is a great way to keep you weak and defenseless economically. Right? Now, I'm not saying, therefore, Ian signing off on being a ruthless cutthroat and screwing over your employees and giving a shitty product to, your consumers, right? Like those people in China who are putting melamine in the milk and all the babies were dying, like monsters, just to make a slight increase in profit, like absolute monstrous behavior. I'm obviously not condoning that. Of course, when you're in the business realm, as my CEO buddy likes to say, like it's like Luciferians the best of it. There's plenty of Molochian pure evil in the business world, and you can't really step foot in that arena if you're not prepared to have Luciferian strategic consciousness. You will get steamrolled and annihilated. And so it's okay to not to the point to where it's to the detriment of others. I also believe in that a rising tide lifts all boats, in the sense of, if we're all doing economic activity and there's not manipulation through a central bank or whatever, there's a tendency, especially a technological innovation, for the economy to grow. And it's growing ever more rapidly all the time. And so economic growth is, then it becomes about distribution, all these kind of things, right? So, but what I'm saying is that you're going to need resources to be effective in this world. That is a fact. And that's not changing anytime soon. And I think one of the great disservices we've done, much like not having magic and astrology on our side, is that we've convinced ourselves that the acquisition of resources is somehow inherently wrong. Yeah, if you get together a bunch of land because there's iron in it, and then you turn those iron into swords, and then you massacre the nearby village, yeah, that was a pretty bad acquisition of resources. If you buy land and you have resources to build a children's hospital, and within it the doctors in it cure cancer, I think that's a slightly different outcome. Would you not agree? It's much like when people go, science is wonderful or science is evil. No, science is completely neutral. Where science suddenly gains its morality is when it moves outside of the realm of observation and checking of theories and testing of theories into how is that being applied. For example, are the experiments ethical is one of the first questions, but then what's the impact of this invention on society? That's where the rubber hits the road, not this all of science is good or all of science is evil. That's nonsense. It's the same thing with the acquisition of resources. There's noble applications of it, and there's evil applications of it, and there's everything in between. But acquiring resources, if you're not being like horrible to your fellow human beings, you're just competing with them in the economic arena, you're making wise investments, right? That's okay. And I encourage you to do that where you can. Most people watching this can probably, first thing you do is get the food, water, start with rice and beans and build up from there. Get yourself a bunch of food, get yourself a bunch of water, get yourself medicines that you need, stockpile that stuff, get yourself a point and click for home defense if you need such a thing, right? Which is maybe not a bad idea, being able to defend yourself in the future, especially if you live in a city. If you're able to get out of cities, do that. All that physical stuff. But if you have extra resources after that, start buying silver. You can buy an ounce of silver every week. You really can. At the end of the year, you have 52 ounces of silver, right? You can probably buy more than that. A lot of people watching this. And if you have a lot of resources, well, you want to probably buy gold, mostly because it's super hyper portable and easy to hide and store and whatever, right? You can store a lot more wealth on a lot less space with gold. And both those are going to climb astronomically, because when the old system implodes, money is sort of like energy. It doesn't really get destroyed. It moves, and it appears to change in value based on what metric you're looking at it with. So acquiring resources and acquiring money, especially during this upcoming financial dislocation that's going to happen, I don't know when, sometime this year, almost certainly. What I know with certainty is that January 1st, 2025, the new ISO 222 messaging system goes live for all the SWIFT affiliates, the international money transferring. And only some amount of coins are ISO 222 compliant. And it's run by Ripple. So, right? Like let's put two and two together here. Look at those ISO 222 coins. Those are going to be used. What else will be used? I don't know. Will there be ones that are outside of that? Various application coins, like Cardano's kind of like it's a better version of Ethereum in terms of like a sort of Web3 programming language type thing. And Ethereum's like a massive scam anyway. You know, Ethereum, like, oof, right? By the way, Bitcoin going for all-time highs right now. Holy shit, is there a surge in crypto? I feel like this is the right before the retail rug pull that always happens right before a halving. There'll be the retail rug pull / your last buying opportunity. And then there's going to be a bull run in crypto like has never been seen, especially going into 2025. You have the Bitcoin halving, which totally correlates to some kind of when they do some kind of debt rebalancing or rolling over some kind of debt at the inter-country level, that there's always a giant surge in Bitcoin, and it just so happens that coincides, and I think it's the U.S. debt rollover. It just so happens to coincide with the Bitcoin halving, probably not a coincidence. And so money surges into it. So, I mean, be careful because crypto is mad volatile, but I think there's a buying opportunity coming up. And if you don't have anything in it and you've already done all the rest of the things I said, you can consider looking into ISO 222 coins. I also think Bitcoin's either the greatest rug pull in history or it's going to be digital gold. And I'm just really not sure which. I actually think XRP is going to end up being digital gold, meaning some amount of XRP to 1 ounce of gold, probably. I don't know what the exact difference is, but there's 100 billion units of XRP. So unless you have that anti-gravity Antarctica Nazi guys out there mining the asteroid belt and bringing back gold, maybe, in which case they could easily back it 1-to-1, but then the price of gold would be a bit different. But take advantage of this rebalancing that's coming up. Acquire those assets. Start looking for opportunities. Sit on a lot of dry powder this year. Think of all the times not having dry powder, not having a cash reserve burned you, and think of what you can do with that. Rockefeller said, you buy when there's blood in the streets, right? Like Rothschild says, Napoleon won at Waterloo, and then he sells his, Nathan Rothschild, I think it was, he sells all his stocks publicly, and then he has all his agents in the crowd, and there's a panic in the London Stock Exchange. And then during the panic, Rothschild's agents buy everything up for pennies on the dollar. That kind of opportunity is coming out. You've got to have dry powder for it. So be careful writing these, because the crypto will not be immune from any kind of macroeconomic dislocation. At some point it will be, and I think that could be as soon as 2025. But it's, you got to be careful. You got to understand it's a speculative asset. But I do think that by far the biggest gains can be seen in crypto, but it's infinitely more risky. Just be smart, be in gold and silver, and then if you want to speculate, if you want to swing for the fences, get some crypto. So yeah, and then in the future we'll be able to buy up land, we'll be able to buy up resources, like material resources, and we'll be able to make these things. I really, really believe that. And again, it's nothing to do with me. Like some people watching this are maybe on the other side of the planet, they might want to figure out how to do that where they live, And what I want to do is come up with a template that people can change to their locality, because they'll have different traditions, they'll have different whatever, and have it be something that's very flexible and very modular. So that way places, because free will is one of the big parts of it. All right, super long thing there, but I think it's important. So yeah, if people are interested in working with me to talk about that, I'm especially soon I'm going to be done with charts for people who aren't paying me for the very high level, very intensive services. Like pretty much all my main charts, unless you have fairly deep pockets, are going away because I just simply don't have time to do that anymore. And I'm supposed to advise people who have the ability to really change the world. And that tends to be people who have more money. I'm still going to be teaching angelic magic classes at an affordable price. For some period of time, I'm still going to be doing the spiritual guidance stuff for a reasonable price. And I'm still going to do this channel for free, right? I'm going to have at some point, I'm going to have like a forum up for people to talk. I kind of already have one for my former angelic magic students, but those are some things I'm going to do. But where I was going with that is that if you're someone who has been wondering what to do, and you are a wealthier individual and you would like some advice in terms of how to time things astrologically, like I would love to be of service, and also hopefully help you to see why this helping out our fellow humans, this most high consciousness, is the far-flung future, but it's going to be a near-term future, and it's something worth bringing into the world because the children deserve it, the future generations deserve it. So that's my spiel on that. Still drinking that coffee. I will never sleep. I don't get enough sleep, guys. So Dana Swenson, what's up? What are you drinking? Yeah, how are you doing, Dana? And yeah, coffee. Caught one live. Nice to see you, food hoarder. Diana Forsaltan, the beautiful family. Great to see you. Love you. Say hi to the big man over there with you. Give him my love. If you're watching, Big B, nice to see you, man. I hope to hang out with you sometime. Maybe this summer. I want to talk to you about that, actually. What's up, Max? Max is one of the guy I gave the shout out to, angelic magic student. Brett's a former angelic student, angelic magic student, great guy. Both of them are great, exceptional men. Relic, what's up, brother? Food Hoarder said, it's okay, missing the T train. I'm still ticked. Oh, got me once. Oh, yeah, what I was talking back then about. See, it's always weird for me to read the live stream like with an hour lag. I'm like, what? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, it was about what you're talking about back then. And sometimes I cannot for life of me piece it together. At some point, I need to have like some kind of person help me to like correlate these. And I need to do it more like the way Dark Journalist has it. I just really, at some point, when I have the means, need to hire an executive assistant and watch things get much more coherent and well run. It's a logistics thing, has to be trumped, alternative not great. That's understatement of the young millennia. Biden while in Texas today, actually I can make this bigger for me. Biden while in Texas today claimed all the houses that burn in these wildfires get destroyed because the houses that don't get destroyed have the right roof on them. Wow, shades of the blue for dew, right? Yeah, and nice to see you, Angela. I don't think I've ever seen you on the channel before, so nice to see you. Oswald Spangler regarding Sniffer, if it walks like a goat, Sniffer is totally possessed by a satanic goat spirit. Huh. That's a hardcore claim. It could be. I don't like his vibe, that's for sure, but he's some of his content is fire. You know, you got to separate the wheat from the chaff and be discerning. A lot of my knowledge is gained through the underworld, and that includes, I would say, sifting through the work of minds like Zephyr. Because yeah, I just do not get a good vibe off that guy. I feel similar. I feel really sad to say this because I used to really look up to him, but I think either something snapped in him or he's maybe under the gun. I don't think he's a bad person, and I used to think he was like kind of a hero, but I'm sad to see kind of what's happened recently with God, I can't even think of his name, Cliff Hyde. Like he's kind of gone off the deep end and seems to be in an anti-Jewish place that I don't like. And it's really, I mean, these guys are smarter than me. Like what? Like how did they not figure out what I figured out? It's not that hard. It's out there. Did you see Cat Williams on JRE? He's surprisingly knowledgeable and convinced Joe to read the Emerald Tablet. That's pretty cool. No, but Cat Williams is a very interesting character. He seems very Luciferian to me, and there's like symbolism around that man. And the way he's dropping knowledge, I think, you know, he could even be like a operative of intelligence, of Luciferian intelligence, like straight up. The spirit of Lucifer is certainly moving through him. That's one thing to understand is sometimes there's on the ground conspiracies, right, where there's like different factions working together. And of course, in anything that's highly organized like politics or corporate power, so like Elon Musk and Trump, when I say that Elon Musk in particular is Luciferian, I suspect strongly that he's literally someone who worships Lucifer. I strongly suspect that. Yeah, and so sometimes there's like that overt conspiracy, but very often it's that a spirit moves through someone because of their state of consciousness. And so that's something to keep in mind, is that it can appear coordinated and conspiratorial in nature when really it's that the spirit is moving through someone based on their own consciousness, kind of determines which thoughts move through their mind, if that makes sense. That's really how it is in a way you could describe the consciousness of tuning your radio, your transceiver, your transmitter and receiver, tuning it to a higher frequency, right? I mean, that's pretty much literally what's happening. Some of it I think is brain architecture related, and some of it's cranial capacity. Vibhadev Mishra talked about that a lot. I have a very big head. I notice a lot of people I notice a lot of kids nowadays have much bigger heads, it seems, than the prior generation. My son has a much bigger head than I do. And so I've noticed a lot of babies seem to have very large heads, and that I don't know whether it's like pushed over the top yet, but I feel like special souls are coming into the world now that have those larger heads, and that it could be that you need to have a certain kind of brain architecture in order to have a radio that will align with those frequencies. I don't know exactly how that works. I think that it's something that is based on our actions and our inner state and our interconnectedness. So, yeah, whole dirty bit. ODB. Hi, Angela. Nice to see you. Huh. When did you talk to Bosley? Yeah, it's on the channel as well. You can check it out. Yeah, there's a couple of different times I've had him on the channel. He's amazing. I love Walter. I love him. He's a good person. He just really is. He's just a very authentic guy. He needs to pull that clout for me and get Dr. Joseph Farrell on this channel. Tried so many times. I actually should try to reach out to Daniel Liz too. I'd love to do him. I don't think he does interviews though, really, or almost never. He does it for big things. Who can blame him? His channel's way bigger than mine, and his research is fantastic. Moon Mormons? Yeah. Well, that I hadn't actually heard of Moon Mormons until right now. So yes, I would agree that it's more believable than this thing I've literally only read the words about, and even the words seem like not very likely to me. Moon Mormons, hello, greater name I've heard in a while. Yeah, no kidding. It sounds like a great band name. And now the Moon Mormons. I don't know what they'd be like. Some kind of like weird 60s, yummy, 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 I got love in my tummy. That's like what I'm hearing in my mind when I think of. And now the Moon Mormons, some like super painfully white band that's like overly kitschy and too cute and just kind of like yikes, like saccharine. Right? Because they can't have sugar. Greatest. Okay, Meow, what's up, Meow? I don't think they'll let Trump run. You watch, he's going to win, 100%. How about Pluto Plotinus? Neptune Nazis? Yeah, there could be. That guy was saying that they have it way out there. Oh, yikes. Wrong spot on the live feed. Yep, not good. Bosley was just covering Agartha the other week. Yeah, I want to look into that. I'd love Walter Bosley, and he's a great researcher, and he has a lot more time in his hands, I think, than I do, or he devotes a lot more time to reading than I do. To give him props for credit where it's due. I spend a lot of time doing active esoteric stuff and working with people, and I actually mentor a couple of younger guys. Hey, Brecken, if you're watching, what's up, dog? In fact, I need to reach out to one of them after the show, I just realized. Mike, let's see, Lois Chakra, not sure on earthquake technology. There's a theory, I'm trying to spruce through these here. There's a theory that China colonized Tibet to gain access to Agartha entrances there for lost tech. Wow, I have not heard that. That's fire. I mean, that's horrible. It's horrible that the colonization happened, but that's a incredible thought. I think that if they tried to go in there, they would get clapped, because I don't think Agartha's empty at all. Geoengineering. What's up, Vinay? I gave you a shout out earlier. I don't know if you saw that. Hey, Max. All the Nazis actually moved to the U.S. Yeah, a lot of them did, for sure. It was key that they penetrate here above all else. Exactly. I think they ended up winning the war after the fact, or they're on the precipice of a total victory. The Virgin Group, shaking my head. Mormons are behind it too. Not sure what you're talking about there. This is so flipping good right now. Fire. Thank you, Mike N. Haven't seen you before in here. I don't think so. Good to see you, man. Let's see. The day of the 2016 election, Kerry went down there to Newt Gingrich, then Obama visited a few weeks ago. Why were they all there taking orders? Wow. Yeah. I'm aware of that meeting, and that is, like the Archbishop Kirill was down there, basically the Orthodox Russian Pope. What? Right? Who has Putin's ear in a big way. So one separation removed from Putin. Some people say one of the powers behind Putin that keeps him in power is Archbishop Kirill. I'm just trying to get on all the naughty lists here tonight, folks. They're all Abrahamic. No, that's not what they're called. There's another name for them. Who's really running the show? Yeah, I already answered that earlier. Let's see. Zoroastrian, no, none of those. Didn't know the royal family followed Shabbatai. Yeah, the Saudis did. Yeah, but a long time ago. There's a name for this group. Oh, I'm going to look it up because it's been bothering me. Let's see. It'll probably come up in like 2 seconds here. Come on. It's not going to tell me. The Jewish roots of the House of Saud. What are they called? Just give me the bloody word. There's a word for that. Ah. Let's see. Sorry, guys. I'm going to lose mind. if I don't find this out. Come on. Okay, so Sabati Zabai, 1626, claims to be Jewish Messiah. Yeah, nobody cares about any of all this stuff. Conversion. There it is. And they were then called, I just remembered it, even though it's not on here, Donmeh Jews. Donmeh, Donmeh Jews. I remembered it, and I have not actually found it on here, so I'm glad that I suddenly remembered it. Oh, no, it's because it says thereafter these new Muslims were known as Donmeh. So it is actually there. I probably saw it out of the corner of my eye. So let's see here. Uh-oh, I lost the stream. There it is. Okay, so yeah. Donmeh, D-O-N-M-E or M-E-H, depending. Yep. Oh, yeah, I'm an Oregonian. Oh, you're saying, yeah. Well, I own a legal home defense unit. C.J. Hopkins' latest article on Substack, read ChatGPT is a good read. Yeah, interesting. They're all using astrology. Oh, hell yeah, they are. Numerology. They're using all kinds of stuff out there. That's what I'm saying. Is like, y'all are letting them, like, keeping all that firepower to themselves. And like, there's a lot of spiritually potent people out there. The problem is you do have to really seriously deal with trauma, and you can't, if you use black magic, it'll just absolutely destroy you. And you have to be really careful and really discerning. That said, a careful, methodical, mature approach to the study of astrology is totally fine and mostly harmless, I would say. But magic, though, is a completely different ball of wax, and there's a tremendous amount of discernment and wisdom. And I like to teach people because then I can help to teach them ethics and guide them. And the people who are attracted to my class almost always end up being like very ethical and very just very polarized to the most high vibration by and large. You know, mostly very sophisticated, interesting, deep people. I've been really blessed with my students. Are just really amazing. But, you know, I do suggest a lot of caution. I guess I should have said this earlier. I do suggest a lot of caution in the use of magic, but I think that it's foolish to just completely discount it or think that it's only evil when it's really just like science. It's just it's a way of tapping into a hidden series of operative laws of physics known collectively generally as the Hermetic principles in the West. There's other names for it. There's other aspects to it. There's other hidden rules as well as the well-known Hermetic principles. But that's what it is it's just taking advantage of the forces of nature the same way astrology is just taking advantage of the fact that God's divine plan is above us, appropriately enough, in the heavens. And that's why I often say that the worst form of pollution is light pollution, because people no longer look up at the heavens. And when you look up the heavens, if you go in the middle of Montana, rural Montana, or God, if you go to Tibet or Nepal or something, or you go extreme northern Finland, right, or extreme northern Norway, right? You look up and you see the aurora borealis, maybe, or even without that, you just see the rising of the Milky Way. It's hard not to look at that and have a sense of awe that then makes it more likely that you're going to be spiritual, know that God exists, and I think even be moved by the grandeur of it to want to know God. And so light pollution is a big part of why flat Earth is even remotely a thing, because if it wasn't, I don't think anyone would buy it, because they could kind of look up and go, oh yeah, no, obviously we're on a generally spheroid. Is it a tube torus or is it a sphere? Right? Like, flat earthers love to like lose their mind over that, and I have it there in part as a, you know, like, I don't mind if you believe in it, but just don't come at me, bro, in the comments about it, right? And I reserve the right to say my opinion about it on this channel, and I'm not super interested in rebuttals about it, because it's just something where, as an astrologer, it's somewhat repugnant to me, this idea. And so, yeah, the use of just looking up at God's plan and being able to decipher it seems like our birthright, because it was used by every civilization basically before the Abrahamic faith came along. But of course, the rulers of the Abrahamic faith countries, they all freaking use it. Yeah. So it's theology. They use it to target places. All the royal families use astrology. Queen Elizabeth bankers cults, 100%. Yeah, it's a data info war, and everyone's fighting with two arms behind their back against people who are abusing these forces for evil. I'm not suggesting abusing them for evil or selfish. You can use something to enrich oneself, for example, if you then deploy those assets in a noble way, and also if you acquire those riches through reasonable and legal means, not through completely annihilating a bunch of poor people, becoming a slumlord and squeezing everyone into rent, and just like brutally repressing your workers in like some third world underground slave labor factory just to make more money, right? Like that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about going out there and through wise investment into what's already occurring in the world, the movement and transfer of goods and services, provide something, create something, make business, not money, and figure out how you can get your hands on resources that you can then do good works with. In fact, that's just it, is like when you do angelic magic and you ask for magic, you should tithe 10% of it to good causes. I like to give to a local domestic violence shelter. I like to give to a salmon environmental group to protect the Northwest salmon, because I was born and raised in Oregon, and the salmon are iconic to the Northwest. They're beautiful. They're delicious. They're a treasure. They're a great treasure, and we must protect the natural world. And so I give to those two charities, and then I often give to people I know might be in a more difficult place, or like there's a young man who's a Nigerian artist, and I pay him an amount that I think would be fair for an American artist, which is a huge sum of money for him, in order to do some works of art for me. And I could pay him, I'm sure, a tenth what I pay, and he would be ecstatic. But I want to pay him way more than I need to, because it's a way of giving back to someone who lives in difficult circumstances. And I'm also I'm not just giving him a handout here, I'm trying to teach him to fish, and I make him work very hard in terms of developing his artistic skill, not like, beating him with an economic cudgel, but encouraging him to greatness, right? So like, you need to give back when you use these things like astrology and angelic magic to bring in abundance. That's totally okay. That's great. Fill your own chalice, so that way you can fill other people's chalice. You need to do that. It's the oxygen mask from the ceiling. Put it on yourself first, and then put it on the child, right? You have to be able to put that oxygen mask on by like accumulating resources. But then when you do, you should use it for benevolent purposes. And it's even okay to accumulate a lot of resources to save up for a big move, to make a momentous change, right? And to really save up money to make a very conscious and wise, oops, I just hit something. Ugh, I hate that Windows noise. Yeah, I know I'm on Windows. I'm just not savvy enough to do Linux. I should do that, but I just don't know how, and not interested at this point in my career to like try and learn that system. If someone wanted to do it for me somehow, I don't know. Anyways, yeah, so astrology, you could look at it, the astrology esoteric gap between the elites and the regular people is a big part of why some people are elites and everyone else is regular people. The elites understand the operating system of the universe, aka the Hermetic principles, plus some additional esoteric rules and laws, some of which are hidden and occulted. So this East Coast meat machine is going to bed. Catch up tomorrow. Yep, right on, Mike. Have a good one, brother. Govind asks, semen retention will help us men to go towards divine masculine, yang, solar file, Jupiterian energy. Yeah, I'm open to that. It's something I hope to do at some point, like the Tantra stuff. Tantra is really important. Absolutely, I agree with you. So why not? Gnosis talks about abstinence. I don't think it's the sole way, but it does seem like certain aspects of the semen retention stuff, in particular Tantra, it's the ultimate form of magic. That's why at the center of all mystery schools, Luciferian and Molochian, it's always black Tantra, and then maybe gray Tantra, perhaps, in the case of Luciferians sometimes. But it's white Tantra in those very rare, most high mystery schools. There's an element of it, of white Tantra to uplift the spirit vibration of humanity. And that's something I want to do someday, but I haven't, like just been able to do that yet. Gnosticism is true Christianity. Well, I think so, yes, but I think that Gnosticism is probably because Jesus spent some time in India. I noticed your name looks Indian to me, and perhaps you found me through Bibidev Mizra, who's a wonderful, wonderful man. I think I saw you comment about him. Love Bibu, love him. Can't say enough good stuff about him. He's even more awesome than he appears on the show. I just really like him and admire his intellect. I believe that Jesus came back with the concept of Maya, and that is turned over time into a dark Gnostic version around Yaldabaoth and a dark creator god that you can also see later in Sabbatian Frankism, right? That the true creator god is hidden behind the evil god, but then the Sabbatian Frankists, you have to do insane things in order to access it. It's similar to some of the darker, there's actually very dark groups in India that I can't remember their name of them, but I think they kind of do Black Tantra. They try and do like really society mind-bending things in order to be spiritually freed in some kind of way. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff out there, but I don't know that I would say that Gnosticism is true Christianity. I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I just think that's a little too all-encompassing of a statement that I can't really sign on to that. That's why the CIA exists, Celestial Information Agency. If they know someone can become powerful based on their chart, they try to prevent. Yeah, fortunately, they don't find everyone. And a lot of people were sleeper cells that have recently activated that if they had, I was explaining this principle to a gentleman earlier today, there's a lot of people activating now who are, I call them sleeper cells of the Most High, that if they had activated, if I had activated in the way that I am now 10 years ago, I probably would have been Santos Bonacci'd and had a home invasion and a gun to my head, and I'd be like, you know what, guys, the Earth is clearly flat. I was talking about the black nobility a little too early, and now the Earth is flat, and I've always said it was flat. Yeah, that's the ticket, even though that's clearly a lie. Records available on the internet, although you've tried to scrub them, Santos, are freely available, but that is a lie. So I believe that guy's an asset. So, yeah, I mean, I just think that a lot of people are activating now, and because there's this titanic power struggle going on between the Luciferians and the Molochians, and internecine conflicts between the Luciferians within their own groups and within the Molochians within their own groups. Prime example, the WEF versus China, weather weapons used on China, the Three Gorges Dam almost burst. George Soros talking about that they needed to ramp up economic attacks on China. And he meant it. It wasn't like he was saying it to other Molochian insiders. So there's clearly a rift. It was around the time George Soros said that there was that 100-year flood that almost burst the Three Gorges Dam. So it's clear to me that there's a split among the Molochians as well. Yeah, right on, Max, and thank you. That's hilarious. Off to bed, blessings, Ian. Hariel says hi. It's with an I in there. Separate just released another video on Hollow Earth today also. I know, I want to check that out. I don't know. Some of these guys, like, I just feel like they have to have a team around them. I don't know. Like, I guess Whitney Webb has a team around her. That made me feel a lot better. I would just like, you know, if I had a team around me doing some research for me and also just helping me be even slightly organized, like I would be able to turn this into an empire probably, right? Like, I don't mean an empire like in a bad sense. I just mean like in terms of like amount of exposure and ability to monetize it in order to fund Golden Age Enclaves, things like that. If I had a team around me, I'd be able to do it. And I have to wonder, I don't know if he admits it ever, like does Sefer have a team around him, because his content is always next level. It's incredibly well produced. I just am not sure how he has enough time to churn out the level of quality that he does with the amount of research that clearly is entailed all by himself. I feel the same way about Asha Logos. I don't know, like it could just be that these guys are next level giga intelligent. I know someone who's at that level of intelligence, so it does exist. And I have to be a little jealous of their production value and research. Did he use the correct Agartha terminology? I'm not sure who you're talking about here. I'm sorry, it was probably an earlier comment. Inner Earth, yeah. Haven't watched yet. Yeah, just dropped a few hours ago. Yeah, I saw. I was waiting for it. Hope he wasn't ripping off Bosley. Quite possibly. DC. This sounds like Bitcoin. Hey, DC. I know I used to have a DC in my life. I can't imagine that that's her, but that's interesting initials for me. Is Bitcoin Molochian or Luciferian? I don't know. See, which lends me to believe that it's Luciferian because Luciferian cloak of confusion, but I'm just not sure. The fact that it has embedded in it child pedo stuff that they found on chain, you could argue that maybe the essence of it is Molochian in that way. I don't know. It feels like it could be a rug pull. Ethereum's 100% Molochian. And there's an argument to be made that a couple of those chains, Cardano might be, I don't know, Cardano was involved in some dark stuff. But again, Luciferians will sometimes break a few eggs to make an omelet, and go along with the Molochians, part of greater plans. It's difficult to discern often, and there's a lot of cloaking around the new financial system because the Luciferians want to become fantastically, unimaginably, unprecedentedly wealthy because they plan to, in my opinion, seize the assets of the Molochians and then keep what they already have and then let most of what's left, including some assets seized from the Molochians, will be redistributed to the public in order to generate goodwill and to really cement the narrative that they're the good guys that saved everyone and that Lucifer is the light bringer and has saved everyone, right? Those will be the two messages. We saved you, and eventually Lucifer saved you. Rudolph Hess info is interesting indeed, given Rice's statements. Yeah, because that Jason Rice case, the guy said the Nazis were super into mind control, which, right? Project Marionette was the precursor to MK Ultra. I'm just really trying to get myself on every single list tonight. Actually, all that stuff I've already said near electronic surveillance devices, so it just doesn't matter at this point. Hide in plain sight, as they say. If you follow the all frog diet, you too can sound like Jerome B. Peterson. Hilarious. So Elon, yeah, Sabatines, Donmeh was the correct answer, as it turns out. Lebensraum, living space. Yeah, except for what I was concluding with. Oh, you're saying that the whole nasty leftist idea of a safe space is similar to this German idea. Wow, that's an interesting. At least that's what I hope that's what you're saying. But I agree with that. Maybe those aligned with the most high will be the voluntarist anarchist group, not Molotov cocktail anarchists, obviously. I think so. Yeah, I think the classic kind of pseudo anarcho syndicalism with a spiritual basis, and I think that's what's missing from a lot of these things was a spiritual basis. I also just think in the 60s and 70s when the whole, commune, which I don't like the communist connection with that, nor do I like communism as a way of organizing things. We're talking about like anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist kind of thing. Yeah, I think so. And by the way, hey, Heather, how's it going? Heather's one of my angelic magic students and one of the awesome people like Brent and Max and a few other, I think there's some other guys who are in the chat from that. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that is exactly what it's like. It's that higher octave of anarcho-syndicalism or whatever, right? Like somewhere in the lower side of the political quadrant, it'd be somewhere like in the very low end, but whether it's to the right or the left or to the center, I don't know. Vinaya Gupta, co-founder of Ethereum, inventor of the Burning Man fad Hexier. Yep, no idea what that is. Digital gold. XRP is a Luciferian fake gold and silver. No, I think they will back in gold and silver initially. Consider, if they're mining the asteroid belt, they have unlimited gold and silver to back that with. They could easily back XRP 1-to-1 with gold if they're mining the asteroid belt, which I'm now coming around on has probably been underway for decades, which is interesting about around suppression of like, if you had just one of those asteroids supposedly, and those are ones we can still see, which presumably have not yet been mined, right? There's probably many of them because it looks like a planet blew up between Mars and Jupiter, and that's what the asteroid belt is, right? Or a massive part of a planet, perhaps, and the planet then swung out of the solar system. I don't know. I think it might be an entire planet, and there's an insanity, unimaginable amount of gold and silver and platinum and stuff out there. Singular asteroids, apparently, supposedly, that have more than all the gold and silver and platinum palladium that never's been mined. right? Like if you have access to that, you own the precious metals market, because that's what the nations did by having access to New World gold and silver. So now imagine New World gold and silver on extreme steroids, methamphetamines, and a steady diet of rage, and then you would understand how much more gold and silver and how much more control they'd have over that. So something to ponder and consider, because I've been like, how can they back XRP 1-to-1 gold? It's possible. There's 100 billion XRP. And then when I started to consider, well, if these Antarctic Germans really are off the planet, and the secret space program I know is off the planet, and it sounds like there's maybe multiple factions off the planet, 2 or more, right, that have this ultra tech, this so-called ultra tech, anti-gravity free energy, whatever, right? There could also be extraterrestrials, right, or inner Earth civilization or whatever. So there could be people have been mining out there for a long time. And if that's the case, they could easily do 1-to-1 backings. Have you paid any attention to Cliff High? Not recently, but he kind of was going off the deep end a couple months ago, it seemed. DC, do you think Mr. Beast, thank you so much for the $10 donation, and you're new as far as I know. I can't imagine, like, you're not my ex, right? Like, I can't imagine. It would be okay if you were, by the way, like, but that would just be a weird way to pop back up into my life on the here. Sorry, it's just like when I see those initials, I can't help but think that. So do you think Mr. Beast is, and it's not my evil ex, it's a different ex. So do you think, that's too harsh on her, but whatever, my black magic ex. Do you think Mr. Beast is Luciferian? In a nutshell, yes. And I actually think he's on the higher end of Luciferian. I kind of like Mr. Beast. He's done a lot of good things. Did you see his tweet about the other day about Pelosi? I did not. I wish I did. It turns out he's managed by a Pelosi. Seems to me like a Luciferian pretending to obey. Yeah. Interesting. I see what you're saying. Yeah, so he's sort of an infiltrator pretending to work for the Molochians. Is that about the size of it? Yeah, I mean, I generally speaking like Mr. Beast. I didn't know that because he's done some like good things in Africa and so forth, and was weirdly criticized for it. People criticizing him are like, no, well, I sip from my Starbucks that's frickin' from harvesting coffee beans by slave labor in Africa. I'm going to denounce Mr. Beast for physically going to Africa, spending millions of his own dollars to drill wells and literally cure blindness. That guy's white supremacist, colonialist mindset, white savior complex, if I've ever seen it. Like, that was the biggest, like, man, you Molochians, like, keep finding yet another gear, like you're a, triple trailer truck with no brakes going down the other side of the Rockies, and you're just going for it, and you're finding additional gears and maybe even a solid rocket fuel booster to your truck. Levels of madness that they were like actually literally trying to, in a non-ironic way, make that argument. So I tend to generally like Mr. Beast. I'm not super duper aware of him. My son was really into him for a while, and so that's how I know about him at all. He's a brilliant self-promoter. He seems like an okay guy, actually. I don't super like him. He doesn't seem like he's some super enlightened person, but he seems fine to me. Cliff High needs to move down to Oregon because all the Oregon commies and government are too stoned to be as oppressive as the Washington commie government. Well, I think there's more important assets in Washington is the reason for that. The Bremerton nuclear submarine base, Microsoft and Amazon are both up there. Seattle's a vastly bigger. I think Seattle's economy is probably bigger than all of Oregon's economy or something like that. There's a lot of reasons. There's there's also that big Air Force base up there. I mean, there's a lot of major military installations. There's nothing like that. The only thing that really matters in Oregon is the Bonneville Dam, power generation. Everything else in Oregon, it doesn't really matter, which is part of the reason I like living here in a backwater, especially where I live. So, rural Oregon is basically Trump country and whatever. I buy your assertion that Trump is a great magician, but every time I picture him praying to Lucifer in that Trumpian voice, my brain melts. Let me tell you something. Lucifer, huge fan, absolutely huge, great guy, almost as good as me. Like, even if Trump was a worshiper of Lucifer, he would actually say that, let's be real, Lucifer wishes that he had these big balls that I got, right? He would have to, at some point in the middle of worship, like, talk about how he's the greater power. And Lucifer would be like, you know what? I love you so much, DJT, I'm going to let that slide. I'm a fan. And he'd be like, of course you are. And that's why I brought you, Lord Lucifer, these signed pair of golden sneakers. By the way, those are fire, and I want those, and I want to wear them through Portland, but with like heavily armed guards around me. So that way the riffraff will try and pick a fight with me, but all my extremely muscular, hardcore special forces trained bodyguards will be forced to defend me as a VIP in downtown Portland, walking with my highly triggering Trump shoes and kicking off a riot, basically. But those are fucking amazing, those golden American flags. They're so cheesy and so 80s throwback to unabashedly pro-American rah patriotism that you can't help but have your breast swell in artificial 80s coke-fueled pride at what Trump did there. Is he a Luciferian? No. He's in the higher edge of Molochian, because he's very cunning and ruthless. And like H.W. Bush, Kissinger, what's that guy's name? Zbigniew Brzezinski, Obama. The evil smart ones are in that higher side. In fact, here, I can just put it up here. This is one of the things that tripped me up for a while, is I was trying to figure out how to categorize certain specific historical figures. And there's always exceptions that prove the rule. And this isn't some flawless way of diagnosing human consciousness, but hopefully you guys can see this little cursor. The center between the purple and the blue, conquest, hierarchy, competition, desire for power, ruthless, like there's also intelligence by that point. So the Molochians aren't completely without intelligence, but the higher level, especially up here, the middle section of Luciferian is much smarter. And then the very smartest of Luciferian is the top thing, which is the crossover, the lower end of the Most High. And what happens is you move from intelligence into wisdom. You move from self-hatred into narcissism, and then to self-love. True self-love, where you love thy neighbor as thyself. And that's the core trait of the Most High consciousness. And we're spiraling upward now that we're moving out of the Kali Yuga. And so people like, I forget who you said, you didn't say Kissinger. You said someone who's evil and very smart would be here in this upper end of Molochianism. Let's see. Obama. Yeah. He's a Molochian, man. He harms children. Come on. No, they're both actually run by Molochians, in my opinion. Sabbatian Frankists, what you were thinking, maybe? Nope. Don Meh Jews. Or Don Meh Muslims, actually. But they're converted from Sabbatia and Levi's followers. Damn, I just hot off work. I'll have to rewatch this. Hey, what's up? Look what then. Okay, so Oswald, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but like you're kind of dominating the chat, and I want to get to some other people in here. Yeah, that's an interesting comment. I might flash them up, but I'm just not going to engage. No offense to you, brother. I want to get to some of the other people here because I'm going to wind it up here very shortly. Yeah, Donna, good. Yeah, we got to it. Do they have to do something specific with the seized Russian money and assets because of karmic repercussions? I'm not sure what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about there, so I can't really speak to that. Sorry. Yeah, I'm just going to go. Yeah, that's weird that you know that. Yeah, it's because of all the Ukrainians that are here. When they bring people into the country, what a lot of people don't realize is that, and I'm not talking about the illegal swarm of military-age men that are just plucky, hardworking folk who want to come here, and are not in any way a George Soros embedded with terrorist frickin' invasion force to destabilize the country, right? Not those kind. But when people come through legal immigration, they're sent in to have cohorts, so they're not alone in a foreign culture. So there's a lot of, in Portland, there's a lot of Ukrainians. There's a lot of people from Sudan. There's a lot of people from the Horn of Africa. I'm trying to think of what that country is. There's a lot of Somalis. You'll see a lot of Somali language speakers, and there's a lot of Ukrainians, and there's actually a fair amount of Moldovans and people from other kind of countries in the Russian language diaspora, if you will. But there's a lot of Ukrainians, so that's why Russian is spoken so much here. And it's similar anywhere you see inordinate amount of a language group that's other than English. It's, or Spanish. It's usually because of this, where immigration sends them into cohorts is the reason why. Yeah, Gurdjieff's great. Talk about him a lot on the channel. Sorry, did I need to move on to other people? Govind, I like Eastern Orthodoxy, which is an element of apophatic. Oh, this looks like it might be too deep. Basically, approach is similar to Neti and Advaita Vedanta. Oh, Meister Eckhart, yes. Yeah, I actually really like Eastern Orthodoxy. There's some really interesting stuff. And if I was to be Christian, right, and I don't consider myself Christian for a variety of reasons, and I just don't want to be restrained by any religion. But if I were to be, I would almost certainly be Eastern Orthodox, like Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox. I believe those are pure teachings of Christianity, less watered down, less corrupted. But those organizations are not without problems too. But I do feel a lot more attracted to them, that they're a pure dissemination of Christian teachings. Not your ex. We had a reading recently. Okay. Oh man, I'm the worst, the absolute worst with names. So you're gonna have to totally forgive me that I don't know who you are. I'd have to look it up. But right on. High-level Luciferian. He deleted the tweet on behalf of the Pelosi, which makes it 10 times worse, but also seems like make it seem like he's obeying. Interesting. Yeah. Again, I still don't know what you're talking about, and I'm super curious. Sorry, I can't. I'm too dumb to figure out what your actual name is, and of course you don't need to write it. 294i. Sorry, I'm not too dumb. My memory is not as good as yours. I'm actually very smart. I'm trying to program myself to say nice things always, right? Because our words are spelled. So Ian, you're very smart, very capable. You just forgot someone's name that you recently worked with. Jacob Rothschild dead 2 days ago. Seems like higher Molochians are getting taken out. Yeah, some of them. Yeah, he might have even been straight up just absolutely taken out outright. I get it. No worries. Yeah, much love, brother. Thank you for hearing and receiving that well. Did you see the sudden drop on XRP as it initially rose, went from 60 to 53 on Coinbase? Oh, is that current? Let me look, because last I saw it was juicing. I mean, the entire crypto market's going nuts. It's at 62 cents, 62.6 cents. It's not bad. It's amazing to me that people are piling into Shiba Inu coin, which is at least has some amount of utility, but up 58%, shades of pets.com. But at least pets.com had some kind of business model. I don't know. SHIB maybe is okay. I don't know. But Dogecoin is absolutely just fake nonsense that they're trying to retcon into somehow a utility having thing, which it absolutely isn't. I just see so many people driven by greed that just seem like hubris before retail, all these retail. Oh man, there's this guy on Twitter named JD. He's such a good chartist, but he's so egomaniacal and smug. It's just freaking repellent. And he's just all that matters is technicals and fundamentals don't matter. And he tries to act as though fundamentals are the same as a narrative by influencers, right? And he's trying to lure people into his paid subscribers thing or whatever. But there's other chartists that are great that don't have this insanely obnoxious attitude. And so people like that, I believe, are going to go chasing these meme coins and get utterly obliterated. And they'll miss out as the actual utility coins instantaneously achieve levels, probably 10x is the bare minimum. And I think 100x, even 10,000x is not impossible. Even 20,000x on some of these things like XRP instantaneously out of nowhere is completely possible. I'm talking $10,000 XRP is completely possible. I don't think that that's outside the realm of possibility at all. I think something very much like that is going to happen. It just looks to me like XRP is at the center. And the fact that there's so many people saying it's bad, and the fact that it kind of doesn't move when all the rest of these trash meme coins move. Pepe coins up 80%. You're missing out on these giant gains. You guys go ahead. I got burned in the rare earth bubble. I made a mistake because I didn't realize that giant player whales could just completely obliterate an entire sector at the drop of a hat, aka China suddenly flooding the rare earth market after choking down on it, to wipe out other rare earth investors and be able to buy rare earth deposits on the cheap outside of China. Brilliant move. I got caught on the wrong side of that. I actually sold at the top of the market, and then I got into a dick swinging contest with the guy, and I ended up getting back in and got completely obliterated and lost megabucks. And so hashtag never again, right? I learned my lesson, and now I'm nothing but fundamentals, and I watch it like a hawk. And I didn't know anything about XRP or XOM until about this time last year. You can look for it's February or January of last year. The angel straight up said to me, and I had only vaguely heard of XRP. I had owned XOM at one point, but I didn't know what I was doing. I got smacked by the 2021. I got in like right before it peaked just because I happened to get money right then. And I'm like, I got to get in now, finally. I had bought Bitcoin in the past. I could have bought Bitcoin. I found Bitcoin. Every time I say this, like I die a little inside, but I found Bitcoin under $1. I found Bitcoin under $1. Obviously, I bought everything I could, and in no way was angry that someone had come up with my idea that I in no way knew how to actualize. I actually invented Bitcoin in my mind. I really was just stealing from the game Shadowrun, and I wanted to invent a cred stick. And turns out someone who really knew what they were doing, and I like 100th monkey pulled it out of the air, the idea of Bitcoin. And then I started looking into it, and I was like, wow, someone's already thought of this. And they had Bitcoin fountains for developers and whatever back then. And I clicked on the Bitcoin fountain, and I don't even know. It might have been 25 cents. It was 50, 25 cents. Didn't really look that much. I mostly just got annoyed, and I was like, oh, this looks like bullshit for video game guys and maybe in drug dealers, perhaps, right? I could see the utility as for a drug dealer, right? That was the part where I was dumb. I should have known that, therefore it was a good investment. But it's also super fucking hard to get it back then, and I just didn't have the tech savvy to get it, but I understood that it existed. Oopsies. So yeah, now I'm super into fundamentals, and it looks to me like XRP and XOM are set up to be at the center of it, along with XDC, Stronghold, HBAR. Really just go to the Black Swan Capitalist channel, and those guys, they're amazing. And also 24 Hours Crypto, I find that guy to be extremely credible. He's a little like too hype oriented. I prefer Versan's like very intellectual and polished, hyper intellectual, fantastic research, utter confidence. I freaking love Versan. He's fucking amazing. I should have said fucking there. He's fucking amazing. He just absolutely is a baller. And we're friends a bit. Like I've had him on the channel a couple times. I have his number. We text now and then. I sometimes ask him dumb questions, but I'm convinced that XRP can't have two different prices now, which was one of the fears I had about it. Not financial advice, but I think that XRP, XOM, and all the other ISO 222 compliant coins are the way to go. And then you can speculate outside of that. And if you want to gamble, like buy almost anything right now. I do think that they're about to wash out retail, so maybe not right now. But if they haven't washed out retail by the halving, like it's going to the moons of frickin' Pluto. I don't know if Pluto has moons, but that's where it's going to the Oort cloud, right? Like too far to even observe with a telescope on Earth. Theoretical commentary firmament, so to speak. Get flat earthers on board that's out there, whatever trillion miles away or whatever it is on the extreme outer orbit, right? And that's where the comets come from. Like that's where crypto's going in the next few years and probably beyond that. I mean, it's going to be a multi-quadrillion dollar market, and it's at just a few hundred billion right now. So I mean, it's 1,000 X's, 10,000 X's are certain. Could be I'm dead wrong though. Could be maybe Ethereum and Bitcoin is going to be where it's at, and I'll just miss out. I don't think so though. Dogecoin, laugh my ass off. Yeah, for real. So, now I bet I know who you are. I bet you're a gentleman that I told you to be an international food critic blogger for a specific call. And just because I was seeing various things, but a gentleman who will do very well in a foreign land. I bet that's who you are, DC. Just because your interest and knowledge in crypto. So I'm probably wrong, but I didn't connect that based on name. I connected it based on topics we're talking about. Maybe that's why he died, just changed his meat suit. Yeah, no, I think they're done. I think they're up against a hard wall. They can't reincarnate forward. You're a technical analyst? Hey, I have nothing against technical analysis whatsoever. Let me be utterly clear on that. That's why I went to JD's place in the first place. Tech analysis is fantastic, but tech analysis without fundamental analysis is informed gambling. It's going into a gambling den with a plan, right? With like, you've crunched all the numbers and you really understand blackjack, but you know that it's 51% to the house, and so you're just going to try to maximize your gains through wise betting strategies. Maybe you're going to try to count cards or whatever. That to me is what technical analysis is. It's highly informed gambling. Fundamentals is how you invest, and the two together help give you good entry points for your investments. That's the way I use it, for entry points, and occasionally, rarely, exit points for investments. I don't trade anymore. I made 10 or 15 grand in a day 15 years ago trading rare earths, and then I lost like 20 grand in a day, something like that. So the waterfall event was much more savage and severe than the best pump days, of course, because that's how the markets work, as I know you know, if you're a tech analyst. Meat suit, yep. UI guy. Hey, Ian joined late. Looks like I'll have to watch the rerun. What is up, Alex? How you doing, brother? No, at its nucleus is the mathematical equation of the universe. Oh, tech analysis? Oh, well, yeah, looking at the fractal nature of the universe. I love that. I would. That's a super interesting comment. Do you have a channel, Kingmaker? Do you do tech analysis someplace where you're adding this, what sounds to me like a spiritual component to it? So that is what technical analysis is it's looking at the fractal nature of the universe. I agree with you there. I wasn't trying to belittle technical analysis. I think it has a great deal of utility. I just think trading super dangerous, and it is. I feel like trading, and we can disagree on this, but I feel like trading is gambling fundamentally. We can disagree on that point. I'm more of a medium to long-term investor, and I was able to make good money trading for a while, but I also like lost a bunch of money, and I just am kind of done with it. Like, it also is like, was too hard on my nerves, because I have days where I was giddy and insane and like, like frickin' Dave Chappelle with the crown on and clutching the cash and going nuts, and then other days where I was like, oh God, I'm broke, right? So yeah, most don't find the nucleus though. But yeah, it's just like, it literally is, and it shouldn't be insulting to say it's like reading tea leaves, or you could argue astrology, right? Or any form of divination is reading into the fractal nature of the universe. And if you can read the fractal correctly, because the fractal reaches backwards in time, you can fill out where the fractal will go in the future based on where it's actually kind of already been, which is a bit mind-bending, and you have to change your concept of time to understand what I'm saying. But I agree with you that one way that you can interface with the universe is mathematical in nature. I think that is definitely a way of experiencing the universe that is extremely helpful. There's that whole movie Pi where they delve into this subject. And so I actually agree with you, and I wasn't meaning to be insulting to TA people, because I actually think it's really impressive when you're good at it. It's very hard. I used to follow this guy named Crown Crypto. He is a bit of a character, and I really like some of his analysis. But yeah, so do you have a channel, Kingmaker? Because I'm about to end the live stream, and if you want, I'll give you a shout out for your channel. And if not, maybe you should start one and start talking about this. I don't know. You're not responding. So anyways, well, much love, everyone. I think I'm going to go ahead and tie it off there. I'm going to give one last second. If there's any kind of last minute question that you want to ask, I will answer it here. Doesn't look like anyone's asking anything. So much love, everyone. And I will go ahead and call it there. Have a great night, and I will see you on the channel soon. If you haven't already, hit like and subscribe, and catch you on the flip side. Bye.